Well, that isn't quite what I intend to show. You will have to forgive me for a little bit, chat. I'm going to keep the screen up for me, and then we'll see if we can fix what's going on here. I think it might be Dungeon Keeper that's messing with this. Yep. All right. Okay. I think I know what I need to do. Gotcha. So I was enjoying a little bit of multiplayer. I was playing a little bit of multiplayer, sort of between casts, and I wanted to go full screen, so you'll have to forgive me once more. It's a little bit of an irritant to get set up this way, but we're going to be doing... I'm going to try and do a very new player-friendly approach to Stellaris. I feel I've gotten quite a few starts in, and I'm not actually going to be making a species this time, but I will go over the decisions that I made. One of the reasons for that is I love making species in the game, but I tend to notice it's caused a lot of false starts, and I don't make the same kind of progress that I wanted. So, why am I doing Stellaris now? Normally I do Crusader Kings on Mondays, of course. But in this case, the biggest reason for doing Stellaris was because there was a humble, there's a humble bundle that recently came out. It had this game sort of as its early unlock, so I encouraged a lot of people to pick it up. But I have a lot of friends who have gotten this game as part of that bundle, and they wanted to, they wanted to approach it, but they weren't 100% sure how to go about it. So I definitely will not be able to claim... By the way, if you guys want System Chalk, I need friends. So, I mean, the biggest thing that I can say is if you are looking to get into Stellaris, now is a great time to do it because there's a lot of people who have gotten the game or still interested in it. And I think it's the most new player friendly out of all of the Paradox games. But that doesn't mean that it's trivial to learn. One of the things that I could say as far as Paradox games go are that they will give you games that are very rewarding and will probably give you some of the longest play times that you will see in a given game. Jesse Quill, how are you doing? Actually, Jesse Quill was one of the people that I directed everybody towards for when she was... because she's partnered with Humble. Actually, I should ask Jess, do you want to join in on this, or should I fly solo tonight? Oh, okay. It just said I'm offline, so I hope I'm coming through. Yeah, okay. I have at least one body here. Yeah, no worries, Jess. Welcome anybody from Jesse Quill's stream. So far as Twitch is telling me nobody came, so there's that. Okay, great. Thanks, Jess. But yeah, so what I can say, it's a great time to get into Stellaris because there are a lot of new players. They're all going to be starting roughly around the same time as you. This is a really interesting game, and like I said, Paradox tends to make games that are very rewarding, will give you lots of great experiences, and will reward you with a lot of playtime. But the condition on it is that you need to put the time in to pick it up. And it is a very different way of doing games than what I think most people are used to. But then I also think that's why it's has a very dedicated fan base. So what I'm going to be doing this time is I specifically wanted to do this for everybody who picked up Stellaris in the Humble Bundle or otherwise have picked it up recently. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on. why you should care about this game, how do you approach a big project like this, and why do I find it interesting. So a couple things that I'll let you know just in terms of a bit of housekeeping. There's a way you can help Stellaris right now and enrich yourself. So you'll see that I'm playing version Bradbury, version 1.7.2. That is not the version that you will get when you open up the game. When you open up the game and install it for the first time, you'll actually be playing, I believe it's Banks. Or was it Adams? I think it might have been Adams, actually. Anyways, I'm starting to lose track of all of the patches. This is an option that you can get. Now, there's a couple of reasons to do this. One, it has the Paradox, sort of their multiplayer component. I believe this is the first game that they're trying this out on. You can do multiplayer either with your friends or just try and join some public games, although if you're learning, that may not be the best way to get into it. But I do have a few games. Actually, if you guys are interested in playing, drop me a line. I'm trying to get some more multiplayer games going on this one in particular. But one, in addition to doing a little bit of help for Paradox, and obviously report if things aren't working correctly, I found a couple of things that didn't quite seem to be the way that they were supposed to. But you get a couple of extra portraits in the game. So I'll try and show you. In terms of the portraits, you get this little lobster-looking guy here if you help out with the beta. So I thought that was a nice little touch. On top of that, when you go into the Steam section for the game, you can either go to the store page or the DLC. I'm going to go from the store page. You can click under DLC, and there's the anniversary portraits. Now, my understanding is that so it's free, but I believe you need to download it in order to actually be able to activate these. So I'll see if I can give you some examples of some of the anniversary portraits. I know this was one of them. The cuties here are ones that you will get as part of the Leviathans DLC if you choose to get that. That's another one of the anniversary portraits. I'm trying to remember which ones were anniversaries. I feel like a few, this might have been one of them. I believe this is now part of the anniversary. Yeah, this was part of the anniversary portraits, and I think this was for the upgraded editions of the game. This is another pair of cuties that you get in the Leviathans DLC. I feel like this is one of the anniversary portraits. Anyways, I may have the specifics. Oh yeah, I don't know if you get plantoids in the anniversary edition. Anyways, the point is that there's a lot of free stuff that you can get just by doing a couple of very minor little steps, which I don't know how well known it is. Now, again, we're taking the perspective here that maybe most likely you will have gotten this game in the Humble Bundle if you wanted to, or if you're looking for a brand new start. One of my favorite things is to actually make races. All of these except, actually, I think even the Rothakians I made on cast. And in this case, I've made a species specifically for this playthrough to avoid the sort of hour time sink that I can get into. What I am going to say, though, if you're starting the game and you want to have fewer degrees of freedom to sort of start off with, the default races are perfectly fine. You can get a little bit of a feeling. So, I mean, one thing that you'll already get is an idea in terms of what the species is all about just by looking here. You can see a little bit of the story that's been written up for them. A lot of people usually just start off as the humans, actually. But I guess the big thing here is that you know that this has been built by the designers of the game to be manageable. is the idea. Like, you're not gonna, you know that you can't break anything if you're starting with one of these races. Now, I do encourage you, there's a lot of fun in making these, and at some point you are gonna figure out, like, once you've played a round or two, you're gonna know what trust growth and diplomatic influence cost and things like that are. And excuse me. Some of the greatest moments that I've had are coming up with different species. You'll notice here I like to write sort of these biographies. The only one that I didn't write a biography for was the Rothakian Corporate Assembly. And the Great Kenti Commonwealth for some reason. But anyways, you'll notice that for most of these, I've written something up. And so in this case, what I decided to do here was, I've got a couple things that I want to try out myself. So I made this pretty quickly when I started with the. I just kind of played around with things last night. So in this case, I am building something for myself to try things out, but this is, just consider this the same as picking one of the default settings here. For those of you who are maybe a little more familiar with the game, I've made the Mishar Cooperative. So they are a direct democracy. They have the perks Mechanist, which means that they'll start off with 4 pops being robots, and they also have the technology to build more, and they get a discount on robot maintenance. They also have mining guilds, which will improve from the minerals. We have got the ethics of egalitarianism and fanatic materialism. Now, obviously, there's probably a little bit of controversy here. I obviously threw the sign here, and if you guys haven't figured out, a specter is haunting the galaxy. Obviously, I am taking some liberties with communism here. Whether or not communism should be fanatical, egalitarian, and only partially materialist, you know, there's definitely some room for debate. The other idea here, of course, would be that most people associate communism, especially the kind that uses this kind of iconography, as being, as being very authoritarian. So I didn't even know if I wanted to do this. But I opted here. One of the main reasons that I did Mechanists and Mining Guilds was I sort of wanted to say, it's like, okay, so what we've done now is we've achieved, we'll say, we're going to take the basic idea here of the workers seizing the means of production, that we now have the technology with which to create machines that do the work for us. And so, the ideal communist man and woman can, write poetry or fish during the day, write poetry at night. I can't remember what the thing in the morning was. Maybe read during the morning or something like that. But in any case here, this is going to be sort of the nice communism. It's not going to be authoritarian. It's going to be much more in terms of egalitarian ideals, equality. I decided to motivate it in terms of intelligence. So the Mishar are not necessarily human. They just look like them. They are an intelligent species. So the idea here is to sort of take this idea of, so many of these communes that attempted to bring in communism, they would, they'd be the intelligentsia. They're the sort of people who can read Marx and Engels and all of these thinkers, or even the people who maybe were inspired by I think it was Robert Owen. I want to say Wilfred Owen, but that's a slightly different writer. The idea here is that the difference between the historical versions, where you have people kind of going to these great, wildernesses to create their communist utopia, and then finding out that everybody needs to do work, is that what we have now are the intelligentsia at a point where they're actually capable of creating machines that can do the work for them, and what society would come as a result of that. So that's why, once I sort of came up with that as a bit of a peg, I decided that democracy and egalitarian ideals would be the way to go. In terms of the setup, I went for mass drivers because that is the weapon of the people, warp travel because we do not want to privilege one warp way over another, and just regular humanoid ships. If none of that made sense to you, that's totally fine. That's why we recommend that you start with one of the default species. So we'll go here. Now I need to decide whether or not I want to do Iron Man mode. I think I am, because I generally don't like loading up save games in Stellaris, but I will admit I actually have a hard time getting started. But I think what we'll do, we'll risk it, and then if I just need to restart, so be it, right? No skin off my nose. So, hey, Nubasorg. I usually just go for default settings. I do like 4-arm spiral galaxies, but in this case I think I'm actually going to go for 2-arm because I don't have hyperlanes to worry about. We'll see. I don't think I've ever really done one of those before. Again, for me, I usually like to just do default settings and jump in. So, beautiful sounding game, beautiful looking game, and we will... I don't know, we'll appreciate the story as well as I usually go into some pretty intense detail in terms of why I'm doing what I do. Hello, Coke Willie. I usually go into quite a bit of detail in terms of the reasons for doing certain actions, and one of the things that I need to say, one of the things that's not always attractive about the strategy genre, especially in terms of streaming it, for the streamers who are getting new into Stellaris. I do say that this is a very friendly game to get into by Paradox standards, but there is a certain culture sometimes in strategy games of just sort of saying that there's one right way to play. The thing that's great about Stellaris is that it's a big canvas on which you can tell all these science fiction stories. I do encourage you, whether you're picking a default species or you're writing one of your own, it's fun to sweep yourself up in the story, and in the end, whether you choose to do Iron Man mode off the start, which I don't recommend, because then what you have to do is you have to play a whole other game again to get into the mistake where you, where you ran into a problem, and if you can save and you can reload, you get to sort of iterate over different approaches and see maybe where things went wrong. But the biggest thing here is, there's lots of resources to make you, to help you sort of find your footing in the games. But in the end, you don't need to be scared about experimenting. I mean, this game, you can actually hear the designers talk about it, and they wanted to make a game that was sort of all science fiction all at once. You could basically implement any kind of science fiction species that you'd thought of. So in this case here, the biggest thing that I need to say is the game can be intimidating in some ways, but it does have a lot of opportunities and has a lot of different approaches. There's a way to play as a pacifist, although I haven't quite been able to make it work myself. So without further ado, here begins the story of the Mishar Cooperative. In the aeons since the first primitive Mishar communities took shape in the meadows and forests of Oros, our civilization has spread and prospered. As our technology progressed to a level that allowed for instantaneous communications, our inefficient nation-states merged together to form a true democracy, with every citizen having a say in important decisions. Now, after a successful creation of several experimental subspace fields, the finest minds of the Mishar Cooperative have finished the development of the first warp drives. The stars themselves are finally within our grasp. And so we begin. So, what do we do? First of all, if you want to get in really close on things, maybe, I don't know how well this is known, but so this is how close you can get on the default setting. But if you left click, you should be able to left click and do this. You should be able to get in closer, so it allows you a lot of opportunities for cool screenshots. Anyways, I won't spend too much time on the eye candy because I'm assuming at least some of you came to either ask questions or get an idea of what this game is about. So there's a few different ways that you can approach this. You can sort of say, I want to focus on my home planet, I want to focus on my ships. The best thing that you can do is just sort of take stock of where you are. Here's the galaxy. And basically your role is going to be to sort of look around and find out, where you are, where your growth opportunities are, and just sort of plot a course in terms of what your species is going to do. Like I said, there's a few different ways that you can approach this game. I usually like to just start with any alerts that it brings up, but we're going to quickly run over each of the windows, talk about the things that I like to look at the very beginning of the game. The one thing that I found in terms of learning it myself for the first time was being able to just, open windows as they came up was not a bad way to pick things up, but it does mean you will occasionally miss out on some important information. And I just think in the end, there's always going to be gaps in your understanding, and the question is just how you manage it and still have fun. So we're going to start with the research, and we're going to take a look at, basically we're going to assign our three types of research. It's physics, society, and engineering. You can see basically what your research levels are. There's a little bit of a decision that you need to make here. Now, I'm a bit lucky in the sense that they're all industry focused, and they all have the same research time. They cost 360 physics research, which means 41 months, all things being equal. So effectively, I'm just deciding on the benefits here. Do I want solar panel networks, upgraded power plants, or energy grids? The energy grid is tempting, but the biggest thing that I'm saying I like here about the solar panel module is that for 75 minerals, I get 3 energy credits. And I do eventually plan to have a base on, or sort of a starport on every planet. The alternative here is to go for a power plant too. Now what I'm doing here is I'm spending 90 power, or 90 minerals, and I have already got a power plant 1, which means I'm already generating 3 energy. So basically I'm paying more and I'm only getting 1 energy extra. So that's the reason why I'm saying this is good and I want to get it at some point, but it doesn't make sense when I have the solar panel network as an option. I mean, of course, I can only build 1 solar panel network, whereas this is an upgrade I can make over multiple power plants, but I just don't think this is going to be an issue for me at the start. And minerals are actually going to be something that, that I'm struggling for at the start. Finally, we have global energy management, so this will give me the energy grid. Again, this is a little bit better once I've built up some infrastructure regarding energy. I get a 10% increase to energy credits. So in this case, if I have, I'll take a quick look at my home planet. We are, actually it should tell me here, we're generating 7 energy. So we're getting, like, if I round up, I'm getting 1 energy and I'm spending 150 minerals for that. So again, I'm playing a little bit fast and loose with the reasoning here, but this is the sort of thing that I do. Notice there's a convention in this game where if you mouse over, it'll tell you more about it. So if there's something that you don't understand, chances are if you hold your mouse over it and wait a second, or actually it's usually pretty instantaneous, it'll tell you about it. And then of course there's flavor text if you like that sort of thing too. So advances in solar panel technology could potentially reduce the operating costs of our spaceports. The panels would require an entire spaceport module to generate enough energy, however. So I'm okay with this. One thing that's worth mentioning here, each of these scientists have a trait. So in this case, I've got 2 Spark of Geniuses. So this gives them a plus 10% research speed to anything that they research. Whereas this guy gets a 10% research speed bonus to industry. So it obviously makes sense here for me to assign this guy to the industry role. So next up, we'll do society research. And again, I have a few decisions. It looks like they're all 360s. Naval capacity is not bad. I do tend to find that my navies are fairly weak at the beginning. And I really have not got my head wrapped around war that well in this game. But the trick here is that the question isn't just, what do I want to research? I want to research all of this stuff eventually. But what do I want to research right off at the start? And so I'll say a plus 10% naval capacity. Well, I've got naval capacity 14, so I'm basically looking at 1 or 2 ships. What does 1 or 2 ships give me? Well, an individual ship has 32 power. That's not, that's not really driving me crazy, and I've just got so much expansion capability by simply building out my existing fleet that I'm not entirely sure advancing this cap in the first 41 months is exactly what I want to do. We could do orbital hydroponics farms, so this is a little bit like the solar panel network, which will give me some bonus food for spaceport. But what I actually want to do this time, and you might say that my reasoning is not necessarily the same as the one before, but I'm actually going to go for the biolab just for the extra research. I probably won't use it right away, but I have to pick one of these things. They all cost the same, and in the end, I am going to want to advance my science probably sooner than any one of these options here. Now, coil gun is kind of tempting to take because it is a more powerful weapon. But notice here that it costs 600 research points, so that's going to take me 81 months to research. And in reality, again, I can buff up my military simply by building some more ships. And of course, building coil guns is actually going to make those ships more expensive. So in this case, I'm wasting more research time on a weapon upgrade that I'm going to want in the future. The question is, what's my best option right now? So we're stuck with sort of the same decision that I had before. Do I want to build an upgraded version of an existing resource? So in this case, the mining network. Or do I go for the science? And in this case, I'm going to allow the same intentions that I had for society go by. I'm going to go for engineering facilities. Obviously, I could have read the flavor text, but I know I'm taking a while to get started, so that's kind of how I approached it. The biggest thing about this game is that normally you're going to get 3 items. You can choose part way through, but you are going to redraw these cards each time you move forward. So just keep that in mind. You are potentially losing the 2 options that you have when you select them. But like I said, I made what I thought was the best decision at the given moment. So we could go over the tabs, but I'm actually going to go by fleets first. So in this case, we're going to take my science ship. There's a couple things that I can do with it. The science ship will be something that you can use to explore the solar system. So if you want, you can click on an individual planet, or you can go to the galaxy menu and right-click here. But basically what you want to do with your science ships is you want to right-click and go Survey System. We're going to start with our home system because, of course, that's what we have the most immediate access to. The next place I'm going to take it to explore will be the only other system in my sphere of influence. And then what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be doing some exploration and finding my best expansion opportunities. It'll probably be, I might want to secure something here just because I think this is going to be the bridge to the other ring. Or actually this might be as well. But I usually start off by exploring the stars within my borders, and that's because some of these planets will have sort of resource-producing traits, things like energy or minerals and things along those lines. So if you don't explore these planets, you don't really know what you can exploit. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for some possible candidates. Now, I'm still split about whether or not I like this approach. Especially with the warp drives, I think this is a little harder for me. One thing I like about the warp drives is the fact that they sort of force me to move in certain directions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fleets and I'm going to just sort of explore the galaxy, sort of the immediate area in terms of possible colonizable planets, and then I'm going to bring them back home. Now, there's an important thing to remember about this is that a 32 power ship is kind of nothing. It's very vulnerable, and it's entirely possible that I'll fly into one of these areas and find that it's got some horrible beast that's going to murder me. So one thing I'm going to do to sort of help the survivability of my ships, I'm going to adjust the fleet stance to evasive. Now science ships have this automatically. It doesn't make sense to have military ships to have this. So what happens here is if they wind up in a tricky spot, they're going to run away, basically. So I think what I'll do here, I'm gonna sort of draw a snake. What I'm doing here is I'm holding down Shift and right-clicking on the individual stars. So this is just sort of working out a bit of a path to explore with. Same deal with this guy. Again, all I really want to do is get the sensors hitting these things so I can... yeah, that'll do. Just so I can sort of see what these systems are made out of. This is a bit of a wonky path. Like I'm obviously putting a lot of emphasis on the left-hand side there, but I have plenty of things I can do to my immediate right as well. Of course, the big catch is that the further out I go, the higher the chance that I run into something nasty. You know what? I'm gonna do a bit of a weird route back. Obviously, I'm committing this one to a lot of exploration, but that's fine because I'm not really going to do a whole lot of these with these things. Anyway, there's a limit to the number of, or at least there used to be. I don't know if there is anymore because I feel like I'm doing a lot, but a limit in terms of the number of orders. But again, all that I'm really doing here is I'm just hitting different systems and then heading back home. I also forgot to give these guys a home path, so there's some inefficiencies in that. Obviously, I'm going to systems that I don't really need to because some of these are going to be explored on their own, but that's fine. I mean, all that I'm really doing with these ships here is taking a quick look at the area around. And what I really want to get here is some information about what are going to be the most profitable areas for my science ship to explore next. Finally, the in-game tutorial recommends this, and I think this is a fairly canonical start to the game, but if you go to your spaceport, you can build a second science ship. I think it makes sense to have at least 2. Now again, your resources are valuable. You do need to actually put some effort in and sort of decide where your resources are best assigned at the very beginning. But in this case, I think building another science ship is a perfectly defensible use of your opening turn. I think the first thing we're going to do as well on our planet is actually start building a power plant. No, actually, I'm not gonna. I started by unpausing, but I'll say one more quick thing before we unpause. Basically, my strategy right now, very good for minerals, not very good for energy credits, and energy credits are going to be what allows me to sort of build a new workforce. So in this case, I'm going to be looking at building up these resources as best as I can. Robots are very good at working mineral and food tiles. So with that in mind, I'm going to want to divide my workforce so that my citizens will be working on sort of the smart people things. I want to make sure that I have as much going in to maintain sort of my robot infrastructure as I can, and then I can just sort of ship off the heavy labor to the machines. I'll do a quick overview on just some of the things about the species. So the top left corner here has your government. This is a big government screen. There are some things that you can do. You can reform your government, for instance. You can see what traits your ruler has. Again, you don't need to worry about these so much at the beginning. Budget is a little more of a granular view in this case. I'm not actually making 0, it's 0.75. But again, this is just going to be something that once you get to know the game a little bit better, this will give you some information that you need. And then, as I say, there's demographics. This isn't just flavor stuff. It does also tell you a little bit about the effects that these are coming from. Contacts will be for diplomacy, so there's not a whole lot of use for this right now, but this will actually start filling up fairly rapidly. The situation log is a fairly important one, especially for a democracy, because in this case, our mandate is to build 4 mining stations, and if we do that, we're going to increase our influence, which is a nice one to have. Technology we've actually already visited, you just didn't necessarily know it like that, so if you go up to here, you can also use the F keys, so I think it's F1, F2, F3, yeah, F1, F2, F3, F4. We already went to this one, so you usually don't need to visit it until the game gives you an alert anyway. And then finally, they've bundled everything under the more. There isn't really anything here that I think you need to know at the very start of the game. What you are eventually going to need to figure out is the planets and sectors and the ship designer. But I think everything else will give you, will kind of just take care of everything in the background for you. So it's actually, you spend a lot of time talking, but it's a game where you can actually get set up pretty quickly. So we will hit play and we'll watch things go. Now, if you're confident in the game, you can actually feel free to speed up a little bit. I'm gonna hold out a little bit just to show you the science ship doing its thing. Generally, you don't just sort of sit down and watch it do everything, but notice that this does not have its title anymore. It's been explored. The sun has its name Sevant. I think this is going to be what it explores next. Yeah. So it's building up its research, and we'll know that it's done when the label goes off. But what we're looking for is sometimes these labels will be replaced by sort of resource points. I'll maybe give it one more, and then we'll take a quick look at my military units. All right, so those sounds you just heard in the background were Spaceport and Oros has finished its construction queue. Now, you don't need to pause every time. One thing that is important about this game is that it's a pausable real-time strategy game. So this means that if there's anything that's making you panic, just pause. You can relax, you can think about what you're going to do. Obviously, if you're in a multiplayer game, that might frustrate people, but generally people are pretty good about saying, hey, we're going to play at this speed. So if you have people saying that they're going to play on very fast speed or something like that, that's fine. I actually think a lot of people tend to say that I play this game very slowly, and that just tends to be my approach to games in general. But in this case, this is a little bit like FTL. You are going to make mistakes if you try to just keep everything in your head all at once. You're not going to be penalized too much if you just have your science ship sitting in port like this, but I want to take a chance to talk a little bit about my opening steps. So again, remembering I said exploration is my priority, so I get a science ship moving right away. I'm moving my fleet out. Again, remember that you can lose these ships, so bear that cost in mind. And then now we've built our new science ship here, so I need to give it a pilot. Now I know that this is going to be a ship that's sort of exploring the galaxy. So this roamer ability is actually not a bad one. It's plus 25% speed. The only other one that I have is military theory, which is more research oriented. Now at some point I'm probably going to wind up putting this person in a lab, but they may also get additional traits as they continue to do their missions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick Kang Shen. Reason for this is he's age 39. So people die in this game. Currently, the age at which you start risking death by natural causes is 72. This can change over the playthrough. And it's going to cost me 50 influence to recruit a scientist. So it's actually half of my influence, but it's not a... This is a good decision because I've just doubled my ability to explore, and it's with an individual who has a fairly good rate. At 2 influence a month, basically, I'm taking about 2 years to recover that. I don't really use don't really use influence that much at the opening, except to hire people anyway. So now we're in a bit of an unfortunate case here in the sense that we're actually at a negative balance on our energy already. This is because we have so many ships out. You do need to pay maintenance for doing that. But notice that we've already found a continental world which we can inhabit. You know that from the green planet directly to our border. And then we also found an ocean world, which is a nice big one. It's 21 spaces. In the case of our home world, that is 18. So it's larger than our original planet, one that's smaller. And I sort of have my next obvious steps for both colonization as well as sort of surveying. Oh, and we have yet another one, a 25 size continental world. So in this case, I might actually want to colonize this one first, just so that I can sort of capture this space, and I know that I'm going to be able to add 2 more to the empire quite quickly. So notice here, right, you can just sort of see the ships moving all on their own. If you really want to follow them on their path, you can actually lock in on them. There's not a whole lot to see as they do this, though, because all that they're doing is taking advantage of the fact that their sensors will show them whether or not the planet is habitable when they move in. And the survey or the science ships need to keep running around and figuring out what's going on. So for me, I've decided that the risk that I take by sending these ships out and potentially losing them to sort of a freak hostile alien, or the little bit that I'm losing in terms of energy credits, I'm losing about 1/4 of a point each month. To me, that risk is worth it simply because I've gotten some great information in terms of my next few steps in the game, and who knows, this thing might actually discover some interesting things to the south. So I might actually have a sort of an exploration pattern in terms of taking this big continental world at the start. All right, I believe those are benign. Did not take long for the Mishar Cooperative to come across intelligent alien life. The fleets report that the Martian capital somewhere understates just how alien these forces appear, and only in passing mentions the failure to open comms. So if we want to look, we can actually take a look at them. I believe these are just space amoeba or whale or something like that. So we can research them, but we know that there's not any immediate contact that we're going to make. They're also very strong compared to our fleet, so we don't want to be messing around with them, but I believe they won't attack me unless I sort of immediately go in their vicinity. But again, let's imagine something of this strength being in the location where this fleet sort of lands. Ah, that's great news. So we've got a size 15 continental world and size 12 ocean world. So one of my priorities next is going to be to try and find where the closest species are to see if anybody's in danger of sort of capturing this this territory. But we've definitely got some interesting expansion opportunities ahead of us. All right. I also have some opportunities to build things. So I was sitting on my minerals. Wasn't building any ships yet because I wanted to make sure I could build a mining station. So Fitzroy's World, you'll notice here, this was the sort of surveying activity going on here. Fitzroy's World has a 2 energy. This is an anomaly, so a Class 12 asteroid orbits this planet. The small planetoid's orbit appears to be too stable for its presence to be a natural occurrence. So there's a failure risk of 20% because it's anomaly level 1 and a skill level 1. I usually take these if it's 20%. So I'll hit that. The game will automatically take care of it. It'll probably finish exploring whatever he was at before. But basically, Fitzroy's World can give me some extra energy credits if I build a mining platform there. I use my construction ship for that. Again, just right-clicking on the planet to build the item. The mining stations usually cost about 90 minerals. There's some ways that you can change those costs. And in this case here, you can sort of do a rule of thumb that... So my view is that energy mining is costless unless you really need the minerals for something else. So if it's the difference between sort of building up your fleet to full capacity and building those energy resources, you might want to build the fleet. It's debatable. But a station will cost you 1 energy. Now the catch here, of course, is that this is generating energy and it's not going to cost more than it generates. So I always build on energy whenever I have the opportunity. Number 2 is about average. Number 3 planets are sort of the slightly more common, or sorry, not slightly more, they're the more common rarity, if that makes sense. They're the one that you will... Oh, failure. No distinguishing features were found on the small asteroid that had seemingly been towed around the orbit of SAO 1. Science Officer Kang Shen is requesting new orders for the ISS Pathfinder. So, 20% still means it can fail on occasion. But basically, if you see a 3, that's usually good. Rogue Usagi, thank you very much for that host. Good to see you. So if you don't have any better options, number 2's great. Number 3 is something that I usually develop unless it brings me into a deficit. And then number 4 is outstanding. That's usually the best way I can break it down. Again, there's always ways of sort of navigating things. So for instance, we got lucky here. We've got 4 energy credits. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is taking my construction ship and building a mining station over there. Were you streaming today, Rogue?
System survey complete.
Alright, we have recovered artifacts from an ancient alien civilization on SAO 4. Incredibly, the civilization, which apparently is referred to itself as Cybrex, seems to have been made up of machines that were linked together in some sort of collective consciousness. The age of the artifacts indicates they were active some 600,000 years ago, in this portion of the galaxy at least, but we have learned nothing of their exact origins. According to a partial data fragment that our scientists managed to extract from one of the artifacts, the Cybrex at some point launched a crusade to destroy all sentient organic life in the galaxy for reasons unknown. Interesting. And we now have an event chain. So I'm going to find something for the Pathfinder to do. I think searching out these colonizable worlds is a sensible next step. Looks like there's more stuff to the north as well. So size 60 continental world is okay. It's not going to set me on fire, but it is sort of a natural expansion, like out of my immediate vicinity. That is sort of an understandable area to go to. I definitely think my immediate area is more important, though. So one thing I do want to talk about a little bit here was my decision to build the power on SAO 3. So the big idea here was that I could build some of these mining stations. But again, remember that this is going to cost me 1 energy to build that mining station. All right, so the ISS Trailblazer. This is just a level notification. This is more so to let me know what happened. There's nothing I really need to act on that. Hello, 1-4. You haven't streamed Asia's work this morning, and you've been stuck with... Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. By the way, my favorite track of the game is coming up. You know what? We'll go whole hog. And isn't it majestic? So this is the thing that really gets me into the game, is there is something really incredible about being able to just drink it all in, to sort of see the beauty of this game. Sometimes I just turn the outliner off and admire. But yeah, just being able to sort of get lost in the fantasy. I mean, if you love science fiction, this is pretty much a must-have. So again, keeping in mind that after I had built this mining platform, I got myself up to, it's actually 1.5 monthly gain, but basically a one a turn. So in order to get 2 minerals, especially when I'm already getting 13 a turn, it doesn't make a ton of sense for me to do this yet. Another thing that I can point out is on my planet, I'm actually going to move the human for the, the Mishar onto this energy tile. It's also worth mentioning that if I have some kind of a resource, in this case I don't have any more 2 mineral areas, but it's worth mentioning that if I build a robot, I can actually mine resources on some of these areas as well. So it's less and less obvious that these 2s count for much. Alright, we have encountered some alien vessels in the Seznutov system. Where is that? Johnny Big Time, how are you doing? Exactly 1-4. Everybody from Johnny's channel, thank you very much for stopping by. I think I've seen a lot of you because I was in there myself. Johnny, I think next to Outstar Walker, is the only other streamer I've really tolerated watching sort of like live streaming a game announcement. How was the rest of the Sony conference? All right, well, it said we encountered something here. It could be an enclave. Abandoned ship has been left to drift aimlessly above this planet. The massive sails protruding from its hull suggest that it relied on the solar power to function. Excellent. Actually, it's worth mentioning too, guys, Johnny brought my attention to the Wolfenstein sequel. From the Bethesda. So I don't really watch a lot of like things like E3. So it was definitely really exciting to hear from Johnny what's sort of on deck. Anyways, so we're talking about some of the things that I was doing at the beginning. So my first 2 fleets sort of went to the north. Has completed the construction of a mining station, the orbit of Sao 3. Oh yeah, that was the Power 4. So I've got a couple of decisions to make now. Oh, and it looks like I found a level 3 energy planet. So we're actually doing quite well resource-wise. I was a little worried about my energy resources, but notice here, right? Here's what the strategy was at the beginning. Risk our ships to get some immediate some information on our immediate area. We've got a lot of very natural expansion options, and it looks like we found... Yeah, so this is an alien spaceship. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our special projects, and we're going to investigate the beta aliens, because that's going to be another species. So this might be an argument for me to colonize these planets first, just so I can protect my borders from this species, but it really depends what kinds of planets they're interested in. We've discovered an abandoned solar sail ship in orbit around Paudantis II. The sublight vessel was built by an unknown culture and appears to be several thousand years old. One of the massive sails is a large tear where some kind of object passed through, most likely a meteoroid, which appears to have disabled the vessel. Although the technology of the ship is severely outdated, it does possess some interesting engineering design choices. An interesting, albeit primitive, design. So option number 1 was to get a sort of an idea of what our immediate expansion options were. I think I'm actually going to take one more batch here, and I'm just going to take a look at sort of the immediate jumps in this vicinity. It's not obvious that I want to go this way, but I think it's worth a shot. So we've got some good expansion options, and that was worth the risk that we took at the start. We've been sort of examining the 2 planets within our borders, which turn out to be very resource rich, so I'm also in good shape there. So our next few steps are going to be about building some colony ships to take advantage of our position. And then I'm also going to decide how I want to manage these energy resources I have. So here's the way that you can think about it. We know without a doubt that the thriving biosphere is not something unique to Oros. Both the scientific community and the public at large are eager to learn more about the various forms of alien life throughout the galaxy. Efforts to catalog life forms we encounter are already underway, but our xenobiologists have urged us to focus on our planetary survey efforts on habitable, life-bearing worlds. A commendable initiative, and this gives us another habitable world, or another event chain, the Habitable Worlds Survey event chain. So basically this says find 8 habitable worlds, and in this case there's potentially 6 artifacts that we can find, but we need to find those through sort of events in the game, so. So here's some of the decisions that I need to make about how I'm going to spend my resources. I can build some robots, and what I'm going to do here, I am going to build one to take advantage of the temperate terrain here. It looks like I need 150 energy though, so I actually might even want to cool my jets a little bit on that because I'm still struggling to get some energy up. Next decision that I need to make, so what are my options in terms of construction? Well, we're going to get about 8 energy a turn once this thing's done building. All right. By the way, you can also queue up science ships. So if I wanted, I could tell it to sort of survey a few more planets than just the one. In this case, I'm not going to, just because I'd like to have a little bit more of a say in terms of where I go next. It's a really hard call. I mean, the good news is I don't seem to have found anything that might claim this territory here, so. So let's say for the sake of the argument right now that I only have 5 energy to work with. Well, how could I spend that? 1, 2, 3. So that'll give me 6. That will get me 6 mineral. 4 for the science, and everything is outside of my borders. You know, it might make sense to actually it might make some sense to start building these things up, because minerals are going to be what I use to build my. The minerals are going to be what I use to build my colony ships. You're receiving transmission from the Hulfir League. They appear to have successfully translated our language. Diplomatic channels are now open, and all hostilities between us have ceased for the moment. Alright, so the Hulfir League, representative democracy, they're federation builders, which is good for us because it means that they're not likely to attack us. Greetings from the Hulfir League. We are a democratic nation committed to upholding individual freedoms of our citizens regardless of their species. Our elected leader, President Spagrum, hopes for a long and fruitful friendship with your people. So we're not Xenophiles ourselves. These guys are fanatic Xenophiles. So I actually think this is the Blorg by any other name. Oh wait, no, the Blorg are militarists. So it doesn't mean too much that for us that they're Xenophiles, but we will say that our citizens send their regards because we have egalitarianism in common, as with democratic governments. So, what guys did I make this time? So Johnny Big Time, I made the Mishar, which are somewhat like humans. So the inspiration that I have here, I only went for a small description here, where I just simply said a specter is haunting the galaxy. In this case, this is basically an idea. This is a bit of a take on some of the earliest implementations of communism. So whether you take this as being Robert Owen or some of these other groups that tried to get together, but basically these places that went out sort of into the frontier to create these utopian societies and realized that people actually had to work, and that it's all really good to sort of talk about these egalitarian societies, but for all the readers and the librarians, for all the librarians, for all the lawyers, for all the the intelligentsia, you do still need somebody to chop wood. You do need somebody to cook, and it's kind of hard to get people to do those less glamorous jobs. So what we did here was we said that we were going to, obviously this is a very different version of communism than what people will associate. Some people would immediately say it's like egalitarian. Nah, you gotta go authoritarian, which would definitely be, would have historical precedent. It's not necessarily the only path. But it is maybe worth mentioning that pretty much any society that has voluntarily tried to implement it has sort of hit a certain point and then walked away. The full implementation usually has been done by force. But in this case here, I made them an intelligent species, no defects. And the trick here was that this is a species that is capable of creating machines to do the work. They have seized the means of production. And so in this case, they are able to specialize on sort of the human or Mishar-centric technologies, or on, sorry, not technology, on the Mishar-centric work, so generating energy credits and doing science and so on and so forth. They get to focus on this, and the robots are the ones that are going to be sort of drawing the water and chopping the firewood. So that was basically the idea. I wanted to make a version of communism in Stellaris. The news that we have encountered intelligent alien life for the first time has been received with mixed feelings by our populace. This confirms what we had long suspected, that we are not alone in this galaxy. Each new alien species we encounter represents both an opportunity and a threat. We must be wary. These particular Xenos have a level of technology that are similar to our own, indicating that we achieved spaceflight at roughly the same time. So, we're back to the species panel. In this case, contacts actually mean something. So there's a plus 40 bonus. This is coming from their fanatic xenophilia. We're also free egalitarians, and we've got the same authority. So there's quite a few things that are boosting us, and we don't suffer the penalty for being a new contact with them. So what we will start off with is we'll actually form a non-aggression pact with them. So this will increase the trust. So then the immediate question is, why not do a defensive pact? Well, it will cost us 1 influence a month, and there's no reason for us to do that yet. See if maybe we can get a trade deal as well. Looks like they are okay with that.
System survey complete.
There are signs of activity by an ancient precursor civilization on this inhospitable rock. Notice here that the anomaly level is less than my my scientist, so the failure risk is lower. And what I'm going to try and do here, I'm going to need some energy credits, so I'm going to be a little cheap. Oh, nope, looks like they don't want to have anything extra on that. All right, well, I'm willing to do a research agreement with them. This will give me a bit of a boost. So my next couple of decisions are going to have to be, how do I spend my energy credits? Do I stockpile them, or do I focus on sort of making these kinds of improvements? There's two things I'm going to do. One, I'm going to build a power plant. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this Mishar here. The reason for this is I'm going to build a something to improve my unity. Now, it doesn't make sense for me to spend the 80 right now because this is at basically 0 of 39. So effectively, this is going to take me, this is also worth pausing for. So this is going to take me about 39 months to build up. And 39 months, I'm going to be making about 300 minerals. So there's plenty of opportunities for me to build this thing closer to when they go up. These are the things, again, for a lot of veteran Stellaris players, this is more or less, it's like, why are you playing on normal speed? Why is this taking so long? But this is just generally, I tend not to keep this very conscious in my head now that I'm a little more experienced in the game. But these are the sorts of trade-offs that you want to think about when you're learning a game like this. It's like, what do I have right now? 187 energy credits, 112 minerals. I'm doing fine for food. I could sort of improve my my population growth with some bonus food, but that's not necessarily the best use of my technology yet. So in this case, it's just focusing on what am I giving up in order to achieve this particular task. So I'm going to do this event later. I'm going to draw your attention to traditions. Now, I think this has been introduced in the free version, so even if you don't have Utopia, traditions will still be a part of the game. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But this is something that was added in the game here. And what you can think about here, Utopia added a lot about governments. It added a lot about sort of how you shape society. So this is something that really appealed to me. But you've got these different paths that you can go down, and that's governed by the unity trait. So your options are expansion, domination, prosperity, harmony, discovery, diplomacy, and supremacy. Now what's going to happen here is you are going to have some basically different priorities that you can get. You can just read the flavor text and go for that. Maybe think about what's most appropriate for your system. You could also think about maybe, what do I think is going to allow me to take advantage of some current things I have. So for instance, I've built a lot of mining stations already. So the prosperity bonus of mining station build costs being reduced by 33% doesn't mean quite the thing that it used to when I wasn't building these stations. Now again, I might decide that I really want to do this expansion and this would be a good idea, and that maybe some of these other things are helpful. One thing I would point out here, the transstellar corporations that unlocks the private colony ship, this is a way that you can actually use energy credits to create colony ships rather than minerals. But I'm going to argue that I'm going to have an easier time with minerals than I am energy right now. And energy, I'm going to want to focus more so on the creation of my robotic population. So I'm going to eliminate prosperity right now. Once you max out on one of these paths, you can get what's called an ascension perk, and it will sort of depend on what your society is as to what ascension perk you can go for. So we're going to go for... Discovery is a little bit tempting, but I don't think it's the one I need right away. Supremacy is a little extreme because we've got a friendly neighbor. So I actually think I'm going to go for expansion here. Hello, Loveless. Yeah, I should also turn down the volume a bit. As much as I like it. So I think I'm going to go for expansion here because new colonies start with an additional pop. We don't have any colonies yet. We're going to be building a lot of colonies, so this is a really nice way that we can expand out our empire quite quickly. Some of the other things that we'll get, capital buildings now produce an additional unity. For the purpose of colonizing and building frontier outposts, systems count as being half the regular distance away, so this will keep my expansion costs down. Frontier outpost upkeep reduced by 50%. Population growth speed increased by 10%, colony development speed increased by 50%, and courier network. Attrition cost caused by number of colonies is reduced. I don't recall what this means, but I think this is the smartest one for me to go for just because I have so many expansion options. So I'm making a commitment here. So what I've done is I've said, all right, I'm going to be taking advantage of these additional planets that I have in my immediate vicinity. And the rationale here is that not only do I want to have sort of the tools with which people will be working, so all of those buildings and such, but I also want to have people working those tiles. So I want to try and grow as rapidly as I can in the early stages of the game. So I need to think, what are the ways that I can take advantage of this? What are the ways that I can start building out these colony ships as quickly as possible? And the most obvious step to me seems to be able to build as many colony ships early on, and this will mean doubling down on my minerals. So in this case here, I'm going to, even though these are just kind of two for the mining station, I'm okay with that because I now know I'm a little more secure on my energy. I can support that, and we're going to start focusing on trying to expand out our empire, expand out the number of planets that we have, and basically be able to sort of seize as much territory as we can in our natural borders. So for instance, this isn't a good idea, even though it's size 24 and it's really tempting. I'm not going to be able to do much with it. It's kind of behind, it's behind this desert world. Speaking of desert world, so Arctic world they won't take. These are all colonizable, except for the tundra world. So the border friction is going to be around here. So I should probably get my foot in the door on this planet and this planet, and then I just sort of naturally grow from there. Anyways, a colossal space battle occurred in the high orbit of Stenlar 5A some 600,000 years ago, with ships from at least 5 different fleets participating. One of the fleets belonged to the Cybrex, although the vast majority of orbital debris seems to have come from the other participants. So where's that science ship? Alright, so it's already explored this system. I think what we'll do is we'll get them to explore Vega and Despad, just because these are our most immediate immediate opportunities for expansion. Now this is one of the Cybrex artifacts. Problem here is that I need a scientist of skill 4. So the way that we will get that level of scientist is by doing some more exploration. You will always increase your scientist's abilities faster by going out and exploring planets than keeping them in the lab. But you always want scientists in the lab help improving your technology. So efforts to map the surface of this planet have identified a strange mountain formation in the southern hemisphere. Have identified a strange mountain formation in the southern hemisphere. It does not appear to have formed naturally. So we will research it. Now this is an interesting question. I'm thinking, does it make sense? So we fulfilled the mandate by building 4 mining platforms. I guess the question here is, when does the next election happen? It'll happen in 8 years, and I don't think it makes sense to stunt the growth of my civilization to do that. So let's build some more mining stations. Again, I normally wouldn't do this, but I have a nice surplus right now of energy. So I'm also going to build a robot here just so I can take advantage of a little bit more. So I can take advantage of some of these resources. Again, this is going to hit me for about another energy, but I'm going to be building a robot on these tiles anyway. So I'm a little tempted to actually clear out the sprawling slums here, but I think the Autothon monument is still the right call. This guy's still faithfully scouting away. I think we know roughly how this is all going to work out. I don't see... I mean, the sort of the second tier expansion plans are going to be to go to Swallomia and possibly... what was this? Trappist. Oh, cool! What was previously thought to be assorted mountains in the southern hemisphere of Zif 1 have been identified as massive skeletal remains of a single colossal alien life form. The bones have been dated as 3.4 billion years old, but our scientists have ruled out that Zif 1 could have supported life on that scale at any point in the planet's history. Science Officer Kang Shen has prepared a special research project to delve further into this mystery.
Situation log updated.
All right, and we need a skill 3 scientist, so we don't have that quite yet. Looks like Marilyn Brockbank will be the first one to hit that. Again, we're not necessarily in any particular rush to do any of these, just because our immediate neighbor is somebody who is friendly to us. We are delighted to see you, beautiful Mishar Sphinxes. How can we be of assistance? God, get a room, you guys. So these are around the points. If you feel... So, again, kind of taking this from the perspective... Oh, Oros has finished its surface construction queue. I think... What was that? That was probably the power plant. So I think the next sensible step here would be to start considering on building out my fleets, because eventually we're going to start running into some baddies who want to take our stuff. So the way I'm going to try and handle this, because I have sort of the priorities between the mining and the... you know what? This is greedy as hell, but I am actually I'm gonna sit on...
Situation log updated.
Oh, we have encountered some alien vessels in the Mura system. These strange objects have been flagged as the Gamma aliens. Oh, we can learn more about them. So that looks like that's another... That looks like that's another real player. So I'm going to do something a little bit risky here. I'm going to leave my navy a bit underpowered so that I can continue to build up my infrastructure. The idea behind this is that my only expansion options are that level 2 mineral and then the level 2 energy, or sorry, engineering. So it seems to me that my...
Research complete.
Oop, I'm going to pause for this. So my logic here is that because this is all that I'm going to be doing in this area before I start expanding out to these other territories, Vega is very tempting because of the mineral resources that it has. I might as well put this to bed, and then I know the only thing I'm going to be focusing on are either colony ships or military fleets. And I definitely want to make sure that my military fleets are up in time for the colony ship, because there's an event that triggers roughly around the time that you make that. Weird Princess, thank you very much for that follow. I appreciate it. Again, that's a little idiosyncratic to me, but I'll try and sort of justify the approach. So we're back to the decision that we made at the very start of the game. Where do we want to put our points? I do tend to read this menu like I read menus in real life, from right to left, and I like to think about what's cheap. So the way that I'm thinking about this right now is, do I need fusion power? Well, I don't have any special abilities for my ships right now. So not really. And it's the most expensive out of my 3 options here. So let's say that I need a more compelling reason for fusion power. Graphic Senses is pretty tempting because it increases the sensor range. This is helpful for things like my immediate area, although again, I have a pretty good idea about where I'm going to be expanding. So it's okay, but I think we can do better. And that last thing that's better is quantum theory with the physics lab. So this will sort of fill out our other alternatives here. So we've got the biolab right now, and we just finished the engineering lab. Seems to make sense to finish it out. And science is, of course, going to be that thing that we use to build up our civilization. It's also worth mentioning, and it's not so obvious when you first play this game, you will notice that the costs of things start going up the more planets that you colonize. So this is what prevents people from sort of doing what I'm trying to do, which is to get as many bodies as possible on planets and sort of get a bit of an edge that way. If you don't support your... Basically, the idea here, you can think of this, if you're looking for a mapping to the real world, because why wouldn't you do that in a science fiction game? You tend to think about things like what is being spent on research and development per capita in a country, right? You may have, a billion you could say that you're spending, $1 billion on research. Sounds like a lot, but if you've got 1 billion people, that's about $1 a person. No, I mean, I guess if you got 10 scientists in your, in your society, that's a very high concentration. Maybe they'll do some really impressive things with it. But generally, you kind of want to make sure that you are supporting the minds of your, of your people. You want to make sure that each generation is able to flourish in terms of science. And the way that the game models this is that as your empire expands, the individual costs of research goes up, which is offset by that investment in infrastructure that you make. Whether or not you buy that nonsense that I just said, well, I leave it to you. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, so Jugao. In this case, we're probably going to be switching people around again because we've got some industry options. I can get a boost to building speed, which doesn't set me on fire. I could also do nuclear missiles. See, I've got two minds of this. An improved spaceport is actually helpful to have because it unlocks a new level of ship for me. You know what? I'm gonna go for this. It's gonna take a while, but I do have a spark of genius researcher on it, so I wouldn't normally go for something so high, but I didn't really like my alternatives, and I do know that I'm gonna use level 2 spaceport. Not in the immediate future, but it is something that'll be helpful to me. So again, similar ideas here. If you're really lost about what to do, either eliminate one, which I did with future power. Yeah, it really is Red Queen running. I'm a huge fan. And it's a great time to be into it because, of course, a bunch of people just got this for Humble Bundle. By the way, Johnny Big Time, I know we only got that one quick game that we had in, so if you have any questions, or if anybody has any questions, please let me know. I will do my best to sort of give answers that are focused on learning as opposed to sort of speaking with authority on subjects that maybe I shouldn't. But again, one thing that I can say if you're a little confused about what to do, take the limitations as a benefit. Knock out one option. So in this case, I said fusion power is too expensive and I don't have any reason to put this on my ships yet. It'll make my ships more expensive. It'll take longer to research. I don't have an immediate use for it. Then I said, okay, gravic sensors or quantum theory. And I made my own particular decisions as to why I thought quantum theory would be important. And those were largely driven by the fact that I know I'm going to be doubling down on my mineral advantage and my ability to expand rapidly. Yes, Weird Princess. It's generally there. So I will say that not everything gets documented in the game. There are signs of activity by an ancient precursor civilization on this inhospitable rock. I think they do a good job in any of their games of letting you know what is important. But for, I'll call them the fiddly things, for the things that, like, I guess when I sit down and I explain Stellaris to somebody the first time, I usually don't talk about minutia like, here are the modifiers to costs of things. And so that sort of stuff tends to go in the background. Incidentally, guys, if you are ever confused, I know this says friends here. This is an internet browser inside the game. This is the wiki. So this is hosted by Paradox. All of their games have this. There is a beginner's guide. Now, I actually haven't read this, and looks like my mouse is offset. I think this might be one of the Bradbury bugs. So I won't be visiting this. I should actually take a quick look at the... Well, maybe I can... Alright, let's get oriented. Okay, there's Paradox Wikis. There's the beginner's guide. Okay, bunch of stuff on Empire creation. I know I glossed over that. Again, if you're playing for the very first time, I do recommend the... one of the default races just because it's just one fewer degree of freedom. It gives you more restrictions to work with, and as a result you get to focus on some other things. But I do encourage you, like, once you feel comfortable with the mechanics of the game, do build your own races. It's a lot of fun. Anybody who's watched me play Stellaris before knows that I get caught at least for an hour getting into building stuff. So Space and communism, your two favorite things. Hello, Satan could be of Jesus. Speaking of space communism, there's a great Star Trek full conversion mod for this game. Yeah, actually, guys, so this is also worth mentioning. So Red Queen Running makes an important point. The approach that Paradox took in making this game was to say that we're going to take all science fiction. So if you want to build something that resembles the Imperium of man in Warhammer 40k, you can do that. Do you want to build something that is equivalent to the Xenomorphs in Alien? You can do that. Did Foundation, tickle your fancy? Do you want to build a society structured around that? You can do that. So there's enough in this game that you can really... So in this case, I made my own decisions in terms of how I wanted to portray a communist society in here. And I said, we're going to go back to some of the original intentions. We're going to focus on its industrial origins, and we're going to say that all those clever people who went out to the frontier were actually very smart in what they did, and they were very intelligent people, and all that they lacked was the ability to create artificial intelligence that would do the manual labor for them. Whether or not this actually pulls off, we'll see. But that was that to me was how I wanted to structure this playthrough, and there's a lot of fun in role-playing this game. But as Red Queen Gaming pointed out, Paradox does a great job of supporting the modding community. I'd actually encourage you guys, if you like this game, to actually try and make your own mods, because they make it relatively straightforward, and people are generally quite friendly on the forums about this sort of stuff. But if you want, there's a Warhammer 40k, I think there's a Mass Effect, there's a Star Trek mod, there's a Star Wars mod. There's a lot of support for modding in this game, and generally people are quite good at coming up with some creative things and that's for any Paradox game. There's a really good mod for Hearts of Iron 4 called Kaiserreich, which is sort of an alternative history where Germany won World War I. Hello, Elkanu. Thank you very much for that. Host. How are you doing, my friend? The broken remains of two Cybrix war forms have been discovered in orbit around Vega 3A. They appear to have been destroyed in battle, but no debris from their adversary has been found. Either they were badly outmatched, or there is more to this engagement than seems. So I think that's still outside of our abilities. Yeah, so we need a skill 3 scientist for that. Not too bad. Monday's over. How about you? Well, I'm really excited to be coming back to Stellaris. So I'm going to table this, guys, just because I know if you guys can read the wiki on your own. I do encourage you to go, and if you know a thing or two about the game, I encourage you to contribute. This game, this game is better when more people want to play it, and it's a great gateway drug for all the other Paradox games. I know I get a lot more out of this stuff when I have people that I can share them with. So if you guys love these games as much as I do, or more, I would encourage you contribute any way that you can, whether you've got a great idea for a mod, whether you've got an idea for an article on the wiki. That is definitely a really positive way of contributing, rather than, the tendency, if you're in a multiplayer game, is oh my god, didn't you know to do X, Y, Z? It's no, because I just started. You need to try it now. You have it. Oh, you've got Stellaris now? Oh my god, Elkanu, yes. I'm trying to get some streaming friends together on it, and I don't really care if it gets streamed or not, but just people who, I know to play this game. So, as always, if you have any questions, let me... Oh yeah, Halo would be a neat setting to put this in, actually. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have a science fiction setting that I feel like I have to see in Stellaris, just because, for me, I just sit down. I like coming up with my science fiction stories on my own. So hello, Starbright Knight. How goes the games and stuff? It goes well. It's probably a little slow, but again, I'm taking the opportunity to sort of really go granular about the decisions I'm making. I think I might reiterate to what's unique about this particular playthrough for me, as opposed to some general things that I do at the start. Oh, I forgot an important thing. I need to build up my solar panels. Yeah, all in all, a pretty good day. After successfully translating their language, we have established communications with the Han Moor Interstellar Nation. Diplomatic channels are now open, and all hostilities have been terminated. By the way, the sharp-eyed among you may notice this. When I was contacted by the Mushroom people, who are they? The Hulfir. I got 20 influence. For doing the research to encounter these, I got... it took me... I got a 40 influence. So the trade-off that you see there is it okay to put your society research sort of on the back burner in order to gain that extra influence? Debatable for me, but I thought it was worth showing, and I am kind of curious about who these guys are. So this is one of the plantoid species. By the way, I do need to give a proper shout out for Elkanu, but let's see. You were speaking with the Han Moor Interstellar Nation. Chancellor Shabiglum is our elected representative, but in truth all citizens have a voice in our government. We strive to better ourselves through technology, a desire that we do not expect primitive aliens such as yourself to understand. So what's interesting is that they are materialists. Now they're xenophobes, which is a problem for us, but they do have direct democracy, which means that we're probably going to get along somewhat well with them. But they are hegemonic imperialists. They consider themselves the rightful rulers of the galaxy and will attempt to expand their empire by any means possible. So we will speak with something that we have in common for them, which is our materialism. The way forward lies in our hands, Hanmurians. And they're probably going to close their borders on me right away. Oh, maybe not. So we will start. We are listening, but we determine for ourselves what is truth and what is falsehood, what is right and wrong. We are right. What you are remains to be seen. So we'll start with a non-aggression pact. This will increase the trust with us. I'm actually lucky that they got it, but I think it's because of the materialists and the authority that we managed to get through. So, I don't think I'm going to be able to get away with a research agreement, but we'll see. Well, if I can sweeten the pot... Oh my god, I can't believe I can get away with this. Okay, so if we just do the right duration, this will be enough to sell them on it. So 28 years instead of 30, I am totally okay with this. Signs of Cybrex activity in the vicinity of Despad 3 turned out to be false leads. Science Officer Marilyn Brockbank has asked to continue the search with the ISS Trailblazer elsewhere. Unfortunate. Research confirmed. And the first strike force has returned home. This is definitely the most luck that I've had with research agreements. I think it's possibly because of my democratic intentions, but... You know, Red Queen Gaming, I've always found the negotiations to be a little funny with the research agreements. I don't mind it too much. Like it's not the end of the world to me when that happens. But all right, I really do need to start building my fleet out. I do kind of feel bad about it, but I mean, it's the way the game works. I also forgot to do solar panels, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trade off, you know, one military ship, one improvement, one military ship. You know, there's actually not that many improvements I can make anymore, but. Deep scans of Cellura 9A have revealed a large ocean heated by hydrothermal vents beneath the ice mantle covering its surface. Science Officer Kang Shen dispatched probes from the ISS Pathfinder that drifted through several miles of thick ice and found the water below teeming with life. We will need more resources to conduct a thorough study of the many unique life forms inhabiting this ocean.
Situation log updated. Construction complete.
And we need a skill 3 or higher, which we don't have yet, so... All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move my construction ship into orbit. The reason for doing this is with my spaceship, or my space station, this will give a small discount to the maintenance costs. That's the main reason I'm doing that. I'm going to take a quick look on my main planet. I may want to consider building this monument soon, but before anything, I think I'm gonna build up my spaceport again, just because if I have a nice stockpile of energy credits, that means I'm not gonna have any problems building up my robot workforce. So while we're waiting for this to go forward, again, you can speed up the game if you tend to find this is a little plodding, but we'll talk a quick bit about the first steps that we took. We did the standard start of building another science ship. If you play the tutorial, it will recommend that you do the same thing. I still am not 100% on the risk on this one, but for me it does seem that this was a reasonably... It seems like this is a reasonably profitable risk that I took, which was to divide up my military fleet and just sort of send them out to discover inhabitable worlds. So this is sort of what I consider to be my immediate sphere of influence, and then sort of as an extension I'm going to try out for these worlds. Obviously I'll need colony ships for that, but that's why I've been building up all of these all these mining platforms, just to be able to start building up the colony ships as soon as I can. I want to make sure I have a fairly robust infrastructure before I go too hard on my upgrades, but we are getting to this point where I do need to actually start taking advantage of my my current edge in a few things. Urge, damn you. But basically what we've done now, path for you've decided to go down the tradition path for expansion, just because that will give me additional pops as I expand on planets. I already have the ability to build robots, so this is going to mean that in terms of a workforce, I'm more or less set. That which I don't already own, I will be able to build in fairly short order. I do think I will build the monument next, and then I think I need to start considering about how I'm going to... I think I'm going to need to decide about how I divide up these territories. There are signs of activity by an ancient precursor civilization on this inhospitable rock. Okay. So my spaceport's already building a solar panel network on the surface. So I think there's some sense in clearing out these two tile blockers. So the next generation of human worker is going to be able to, you know what? I think this Autothon monument, I think this is going to be unemployed for a short period of time, which is a shame, but... Alright, these are not too bad. I'd like a little more energy if I was totally honest about these planets, but this is not, definitely not a bad set of resources to have starting off. Even Ziff, I mean, I'm not overwhelmed by the minerals or anything like that, but at least, you know, they have a little bit of energy and such. So the hostile and unforgiving word of Stellaris 5 was home to what once appeared to have been a large Cybrex base. Nothing remains of it now aside from the scattered debris and a large crater. We will have to investigate the site of the base more closely if we are to learn more. So what are we gonna need? Yep, so all basically 3 and higher, which should be arriving fairly soon, but in this case we're gonna sit and wait. Alright, meanwhile on my home world, I think we'll start by clearing out some... no, that's not a smart decision right now. We're actually going to start by building another Corvette. The reasoning here is that I'm going to have 42 months to build up this population before I need to set them to work on something. So I am going to take advantage of my... Basically, I'm going to take advantage of what my immediate needs are. So in this case, this means I'm going to upgrade at the spaceport. I'm going to build up my fleet. A new faction has recently been gaining traction in the internal political landscape of the Meishar Cooperative, led by scientist Zhu Gao. They call themselves the Association of Scientific Scholars. Their members have been pushing hard for the advancement of the sciences. A disgruntled faction will be a source of trouble, but one that approves of the government's actions could prove useful. This is one thing I love about this game, especially compared to Crusader Kings, because Crusader Kings, it is very focused on the relationship between the vassal and the lord, and that does mean positive as well as negative things, but generally, factions tend to be the things that keep you from doing what you want. That doesn't necessarily apply here. So for here, the Association of Scientific Scholars has the following requirements. AI allowed, machine love, so maintaining a population of at least 6 robotic pops will appease the Association of Scientific Scholars. That should be fairly easy for us to achieve. And then traditions of discovery is unfortunate. We do need to, that means that we need to spend at least one tradition improving that. And I don't really have any intention of doing that right away. Excellent. So that was the science ship. And so deep sea, gigantic skeleton, and I'm just gonna track each of these on the map so I can come up with a bit of a flight plan. I do also want to make sure, on the chance that the one of these species decides that they want to expand a bit aggressively and close their borders, I do sort of want to make sure that I can get these things researched before that happens. I don't think that's likely, but it's nice to be safe. All right, we're back to a similar decision here. So in terms of our options, we can go for planetary unification. Notice here, this is the pop penalty that we've got. So now that we have 11 pops, I've got a plus 1% penalty. It's not going to break the bank, but we are starting to feel the effects of having a larger population. So the question here is, do I want to go for planetary unification, which will improve my monthly influence, or do I want to go for genome mapping, which will improve my growth speed? Both are very good. I would argue I prefer both to terrestrial sculpting right now. And I just need to think, so I can go 100% all in on this, building up my population strategy that I have going here. But the monthly influence is nice, and I am going to be keeping the faction. I'm going to be annoying the faction for a little while. So I think in this case, I am actually going to go for planetary unification, as much as it pains me to do so. And I need to decide what I want to do with my money. So we will start by building another ship. And with our remaining 33, so I'm going to wait until... Actually, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to... Doesn't make any sense to do this clearing out yet. It's hard to say whether or not I really want to do... So I'm a little tempted to do the food, except that we're doing so well for this. I mean, we'll already be at +5. What kind of bonus am I getting from this? 31%, not really worth it. So in this case, I think I'm going to go for the mining network, just to take advantage of a little bit more production. I may change this decision later, but I also have an eye on this farm up in the corner here, so... I think my immediate expansion plans are going to be to clear out this tile here. So we'll clear out this tile and this tile. Actually, what'll probably happen is I will clear out this tile so that I can get a robot working on it right away. Then this tile in time for this character to move there and start making me some money. I basically want to make sure that we have one human and one machine tile being sort of cleared out over time. And it turns out that I'm getting a nice stockpile of energy credits, so it might have made some sense to go for those private colony ships after all, but can't have everything. Right. I also don't remember what it costs for a colony ship. Oh, holy crap, I'm not paying all that. 350, outrageous. Okay. So let's get to work. So again, putting priority in terms of minerals because that's what's going to take me into space. I want to make sure that I clear out this tile before... so how long is it going to take me in terms of turns? 90 days, so 3 months. So I want to make sure at the absolute minimum... ooh, this might take a while. Okay, I think I need to think a little bit. Would not want to drag your people into a conflict, but it is clear that we would benefit from joining together against possible threats. I'm not sure I want to accept this yet. It is going to cost me influence, so... Alright, so I can make some decisions here. Do I want to make my faction happy and adopt Discovery, which will only give me research station build bonuses, or do I want to continue on with my plan of improving expansion? I'm thinking this expansion path is better, and I'm going to do colonization fever. It's not necessarily because capital building's producing the additional unity, although that is helpful, but it's more so these later benefits of the population growth speed. So so I'm going to clear out this tile blocker here. What is it queued for? Oh, it's because I'm building this. So yeah, we're going to clear out this tile blocker. We're going to put a robot on here just so we can continue expanding out. Our current robot population is... I thought it would tell me. 1, 2, 3, 4... That can't be right. That has to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So this is especially important because I will make this faction a little bit happier with me, which will give me a bonus to influence. So once I clear that, I'm going to start building a robot on it. And then before too long, I will also clear out this tile so that we can get a human working for some energy. And then... Actually, you know what? I hate doing this, but I think I'll just get it done right now. And then I think the rest of the time we're going to spend building up our fleet, although I think at some point I need to just say hang it all and let's get these colony ships underway. Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure how I felt about that choice because it did just blow up 2 food for that. But I mean, we have a surplus, right? So it's not the end of the world. There are signs of activity by an ancient precursor civilization on this inhospitable rock. I haven't had a ton of luck with these so far, so... sorry, I know I just explained all of this, but I wanted to double check. So, only other thing I might want to do is improve this science building. Oh, and research. Alright, administrative AI is the only thing I'm going to go for here. A research speed boost of 5%, it's just a no-brainer to me. Hello, Sound of Trance. Alright, so what were we thinking of? Robot's going to go here, human's going to go here. We'll at least have one spot for another human where we can sort of decide where we want them to go. I'm probably going to start putting them into these science tiles. The question is, do I want to build up my fleet or do I want to get the 1 point for science? What is this going to cost me to build a new physics lab? 72? I actually think I'm going to go for the ship. All right. And we're going to need to wait for 1 turnover just so we can get the robot. A single badly scorched module is all that's left of a Cybrex research station that once orbited Thermona 5A hundreds of thousands of years ago. The vacuum exposed inside of the module is filled with the dead remains of creatures that are part machine and part organic. Interesting. So that's going to cost us a... Yeah, everything else is too high for us. So we're already researching the one that we can do, a couple of giant skeletons, and do I really... You know what? I hate wasting the society research, but I think I will investigate the alpha aliens for now. How much longer will I be on? You've been on for 2 hours already, right? Yes. Now, normally I like to cast for 4 hours, but I did get a late start tonight. A lot happened, and I am trying to get back to... this won't mean anything to sort of the new people in the channel, but I've been trying to sort of blog a little bit more because I'm not very good at Twitter in the sense that I prefer long form, but there's a lot to comment on, and I wanted to try and get some thoughts on paper, which I didn't actually do, or didn't do as much as I wanted. So I did get a late start tonight. I will try and cast as late as I can. I'll probably at least be doing another 40 minutes. But I try to get at least 4 hours in. I am very reluctant to do less than 3 hours on a cast. But I will let you know, if you are here specifically because of Stellaris, I will actually be doing Stellaris every Monday for the foreseeable future. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is, of course, there was the Humble Bundle that recently introduced this game to a lot of people, especially people who are like just subscribers and didn't specifically get the bundle for Stellaris. We've got a few people in chat, like Johnny Big Time and El Canoe. You know, El Canoe never got a shout out too. I'm sorry about that, El Canoe, if you're still around. I will be doing that in a second. And Jesse Quill's another. A lot of people who are really interested in the game but tend to find something like this a little bit intimidating to pick up. So I wanted to try and give, you know, something resembling a friendly start. It's slow. I know it sometimes is a little tedious for veterans of the game, but I've never been somebody who, like, nobody watches me for my talent, that's for sure. So we've encountered some form of alien vessel in the Vega system. These strange objects have been flagged as the Delta aliens. Until we can learn more about them, we should proceed with caution. So what are these things? Alright, well that just threw a big monkey wrench in my expansion plans. You're a community ambassador for Stellaris. You are going to retweet for a late night stream. Guess 40 more minutes is good. Good. Well, I appreciate that, and thank you very much for stopping by. I actually got I don't know if you're the same person or not, but I did get a key from that. This is actually the first key that I got from Paradox for my streaming efforts. So I appreciate that. I would not say specifically I would do this. So if as long as you are sending that out, I will very happily go for longer, because it's just bed that's keeping me going. I'm definitely not going to try and make a deal with you. So if you're reluctant for 40 minutes, you know, I completely get it, and I will do a bit better job of keeping on track. But if you're sending out the message, I will keep that in mind, and I will try and extend this playthrough as long as I can manage and still be responsible to my employer. But also a quick word, thank you very much for the game and the work that you're doing on it. I really like sharing this with people. I think it makes a lot of sense that the people who are involved should be very proud of the title. But I really love the fact that went to the Humble Bundle, because it's a chance for me to sort of share the exploration. I mean, I love the beginning. I usually spend like an hour or two building a species, which is why I built this one firsthand. But I love the opportunity to share it with people, and the fact that the humble thing came up was tremendous. So, anyways, guys, a quick word for El Canoe, because he's a great friend of the streams. He is a French caster. Actually, I'll read the flavor text here, and then we can do some shout outs for comrades. After studying the wreckage of the two Cybrix war forms over Vega 3A, Science Officer Marilyn Brockbank has concluded that they are most likely destroyed while fighting each other. This theory explains the lack of non-Cybrix debris, and it fits the damage patterns found on the wrecks. Why the two Cybrix vessels turned on each other remains a mystery, however. After they were immobilized, both war-forms triggered some kind of self-destruct mechanism that fried their neural processors. Interesting find. We've gained some physics for that, and +1 artifact. So this should be heading towards the next effort. Anyways, guys, quick word about El Canoe. El Canoe is a very talented French caster. He's been a really big supporter of this cast. Even if you do not speak French, I'm not very good at French. The reason I started watching him originally was because he was playing a game that I was interested in, and he, it was a chance for me to maybe develop some of those language skills. And so but I've really found, especially if there's anybody who's a caster right now, one of the things I recommend is checking out El Canoe's cast just to see how good he is at sort of nonverbal communication. So he speaks with his chat. He's maybe not. I won't say talkative like me, because talkative like me might be perceived as an insult. But El Canoe's definitely a very very personable caster. But what's great about his broadcast is that he knows how to. He's got a really great sense of humor, and so he sort of knows how to sort of capture people's attention, capture their imagination. And because he's so strong at his nonverbal... Oh, hang on. I wanted to research the giant skeleton. Because he's so good at nonverbal communication, just again, it's a little bit like we're talking about learning Stellaris. If you remove these degrees of freedom, you sort of have to make decisions in constraints, and you really get to focus in on the important parts. And that's one thing I love about El Canoe's cast, because I get to see how effectively he communicates without necessarily me being able to know every word that he says. So in addition to the fact that he plays a lot of great games and he shows them in the best possible light, if I were to ever develop a game, El Canoe would be first on the list to share to share a key with. He's just a really fun guy to watch, and I would strongly recommend you guys. Oh, thank you so much, Sound of Trance. It's probably just as well that I got the El Canoe promo out of the way then, but I really appreciate that. So I'll maybe do a quick reiteration too for those of you who are new here, who will we'll talk a little bit about what our opening plans are. The Spaceport's life forms, which the Mishorian head of society research has come to refer as the Tianki, are docile creatures capable of accessing some lower dimension of subspace. They roam from system to system with remarkable ease. They graze on the gases common to the upper layers of many gas giants. It is highly unlikely, to say the least, that this is their only food source, but intake of other nutrients has not yet been observed. They will rarely, if ever, attack, even when provoked, and they can be safely ignored. Alright, so I've got a reasonable enough strike force to sort of respond to any immediate pirate threats. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to stunt my social research by a little bit, because I do want to know where those science ships came from. It's possible that this planet is actually in the vicinity of another alien species, and so that will give me a priority to sort of start colonizing these planets quite quickly. If not, then we're going to kind of continue on and maybe consider these planets instead. What I'm really looking to do is I'm looking to build I'm looking to sort of stake my claims and then develop the planets as I can. If I play this right, I'm able to get, I think it's something like, basically able to capture 5 extra planets. So we'll have sort of an empire of 6 worlds to work with, and we can basically build a whole bunch of extra pops because we have the ability to work with robots. Now again, a lot of those things were individual things that I decided because of the circumstances I started with. I knew I was going to have robots because I picked that in the species creation. But what I did was I split up my fleets, and I took a look around, and we got lucky in terms of just sort of seeing this nice distribution of planets. And so this has informed some of our later decisions, especially with regards to traditions. We're sort of going down this path where we can maximize the benefit from expansion. And all this effort that we put in, we're hoping is going to give us a nice strong base from which to build, and then we can maybe start focusing a little bit more on I don't know, accumulating even more resources, or building a bigger navy or something like that. So realistically, we don't have a lot to fear from these neighbors to the south in terms of claiming these planets, but I do want to see whether or not I have any worries to sort of my north in terms of what in terms of maybe people stealing these planets that I want as well. So just got here. What are my civics and what is my species like? Well, welcome, Carligan. Hey, Alexandra. Sorry, Alexandropolis. Thank you very much for that follow. So it's just a simple one. I sort of had the idea that I wanted to try and make the old style communists, the people who would go out to sort of the old frontier and try and create their utopias. So we went for starting governing ethics of egalitarian and fanatic materialist. Obviously, some people will take issue with this as communism. It's certainly not a Hearts of Iron 4 communism. And the civics that we went for were mechanist and mining guilds. Mining guilds, I sort of felt obligated. If I was going to put red background with a star, I figured I had to have at least some kind of representation of trade unions. But in this case, I went for mechanist, sort of saying that the failure of those societies was it's very hard to get the intelligentsia to chop wood and draw water. And so the idea is that their trait would be that they were intelligent. So again, the brightest and best of Mishar, who now have actually, if you want to take this as seizing the means of production, you can, but basically have the means through which they can specialize, that there are automated servants who can handle the division of labor, whereas the Mishars are able to sort of handle their individual, their own sort of more intellectual pursuits, such as the accumulation of wealth and research. We're receiving the transmission from the Otaga Union. They appear to have successfully translated our language. Diplomatic channels are now open, and all hostilities between us have ceased for the moment. Okay, so we've got more hegemonic imperialists. They actually look a lot like these guys. Attention alien creatures. Unfortunately, I was chosen by Chairman Gurnlush to represent the Otaga Union in all diplomatic dealings with your primitive civilization. We intend to unlock technologies that your feeble minds cannot comprehend. Do not interfere. The way forward lies in our hands, Ofagan. So these guys seem like they're going to be a problem. Where the hell are they? Oh my god, how do they even find us? Yeah, so I suppose we're just lucky in the fact that these terrifying creatures are nowhere near to crushing me. Yeah, that's not surprising. We've allowed you to move about freely in our territory for too long. Today we draw the line. Okay, I don't know if I want to rival these guys, but I'm not just going to let them get by and two can play at that game. Yeah, so I don't know. The only thing I have to say about post-scarcity is I'm certainly feeling the scarcity in terms of my my constructions. All right, 350 for the colony ship. I think I might actually finally speed up the game. But maybe just a quick recap. So again, we used our ships as our scouts. The drawback to doing that with your military units are you could potentially lose them. Now again, they are the least expensive to lose, so I think that risk is worth it. We certainly got a nice early advantage. This is really about information. You can almost think about it a little bit like StarCraft, right? Where if you want to play well in a multiplayer game, what you usually want to do is sort of move a unit out to just roughly find out where somebody is and what they're building. You can sort of think about this here. You can notice that early plan that we made to just sort of do some searching around paid off in the sense that we knew exactly where to send our science ships. So there's been very little time that's been wasted in terms of it. Like, we've had populations working the resources that we want. We've been able to build the upgrades that we want. We got over our energy scarcity quite early. So generally that was something that had a big payoff. And in terms of traditions, I don't normally go for the expansion tradition, but just with so many planets in the immediate area, to be able to expand the population so quickly, it seemed like a very obvious way to go. So our continued studies of the massive skeletal remains on Zif-1 have managed to shed some light on how the creature ended up on the planet. There's a very faint residual energy readings that indicate some kind of dimensional portal existed briefly towards the rear of the skeleton. Science officer Marilyn Brockbank theorizes that the creature passed through this gateway from another dimension, only to quickly perish in the hostile environment of Zif-1. Why it did this and where it came from are questions that may never be answered. Astounding. So we get some experience and some physics research for that. Now I guess I need to decide where I want to explore next. I feel like I kind of lost the plot a little bit in terms of my exploration, so I'm gonna just do a nice little chain here. Again, if you're new to the game, I think this is pretty universal amongst strategy games, but if you hold down the shift key, you can queue things up. Chances are I'm gonna run into some anomalies, which will mean I very likely won't continue out this, likely won't kind of continue out this chain. But it's not a bad way to start. We'll also release another science ship. Science Officer Kang Shen has returned from the expedition that studied the rich biosphere on the seas beneath the ice mantle of Celuria 9A. Our underwater probes have been mapped to the terrain and cataloged most of the life forms. Although this data may be of some use to our biologists, no particular discoveries have been made that would have any application beyond that. So nice boost for experience, and that's about it. So I think here we're going to boldly go to... Well, this is going to be a very roundabout way, but this will give me some ideas in terms of what my expansion options are. So we're going to be very optimistic and assume that I'm able to make it to this colonizable planet. Yes, I do know that, Kavor. Thank you. Alright, time to build the long-awaited colony ship. So let's do a quick survey of the planets that we have. My temptation is to kind of go for the further out options. I will do a quick judgment by size. So we've got a size 15, a size 12, a size 14. I mean, the 21's a real beauty. Oh, but 25 is even better. So yeah, Discipad is definitely my priority here. I think we will do... I think I'm going to go for a new life and hope that we can generate Unity faster than the courier network is gonna be required. I am so glad to hear that, Mesa Magma. I mean, I feel like that's one of the ones I'm a bit safer in recommending for people, because I mean, I love it myself, but did I wind up building a robot where I said I was going to? Yes, but I didn't build the energy. All right, so let's make some decisions here. I guess there's only really one other place I can build a robot pop. Well, I could decide what to do with this, but we've got some clearing options. I feel like my society research is going to be suffering the most. So mineral composition of Ditlani 1A does not match projections. We'll research it. I think in this case, I'll wait till we boost ourselves up, and I think I'll just try and shore up the society research. I'm also going to need to build a mine, so all of a sudden I feel like I'm scrambling. But that also makes sense because I just built a big colony ship. But yeah, Dungeon Keeper is a classic, and with the GOG sale on, incidentally, I know this is Paradox, so some of the classic Paradox games are on there. Tyranny is actually on sale, but I am affiliated with the GOG channel. Or not GOG channel, sorry. I'm not affiliated with the GOG channel. I am, however, affiliated with GOG. If you use the link down below, there's currently the summer sale going on, and a small portion of that will go towards the stream at no additional cost to yourself. But we did do Dungeon Keeper last night, and one of the reasons for that was at $2, it's one of these sort of like, I'm just going to see what all the fuss is about kinds of purchases. And I mean, again, it is technically somebody else's money that I'm spending if I make the recommendation knowing that they're going to wind up buying. But I generally felt pretty safe on that one, and I'm glad to see that that you enjoyed it, because I certainly enjoyed playing it. Although the mission that I wound up doing was absolutely brutal afterwards. Across the barren fields of Denlal 1A, there are indications of old battles being fought. Beneath the lifeless ground, our researchers on the ISS Trailblazer have found bones, metallic shards, and most surprisingly, a container filled with documents. If we send the documents to our homeworld for translation, we could potentially learn more about this war and who fought in it. It would also be possible to simply sell them off as antiques. So, I mean, the minerals is really tempting, but I don't feel like any materialist worth its salt would turn down the opportunity for research. So, translating warriors' texts. Again, social research is going to take a back seat. You can even see this too, right? Just the way that everything's developed, we've been able to sort of boost everything but social research. So that to me is a very clear indicator that I want to clear out that tile as quickly as possible. Let's see if we can queue up a little bit more activity. So mining network here. We'll be moving the human pop up there once all that's all said and done. Actually, makes sense for me to cancel that. We might as well have the mine first. And we can also get to work on a robot fairly quickly. All right, we have a little bit to wait for our colony ship, so I'm going to speed up a touch. I usually like to go back down to normal when I have events coming up, so it's mostly just so I don't avoid stuff like that. All right, improve spaceport, so no more things to waste money on. I think nanocomposite armor seems to be the better call right here. I mean, geothermal fracking is tempting for the bonus to the mining networks, but I think at this point here we do need to start considering some investments for my military. I've neglected it for long enough, and we are eventually going to hit a point where piracy starts becoming a problem. So next up, I think energy grid is the way to go here, just because we are a little more reliant on energy than others, and I think I suddenly found a use for this square. I'm not sure if there's any other better argument for what to do with that. The other question I need to face is, once I've sorted out what I want to do on this planet, I need to decide if I want to... How can you build robot pops so early? I haven't played this game in months. Have there been changes to the research trees? Well, M. Night Slam Jam, yes. Depending on how long ago you played this game, one thing in the research tree was that you would need to build colony ships. Colony ships now begin at the start, but the reason why I'm able to get pops so early is with the Utopia expansion, they introduced civics. I should probably say the patch, but they introduced civics. So when you have a society, you can pick 2 civics. The one I went for was mining guilds, which will give me a bonus to mineral production, but there's also the mechanist. Oh my goodness. Krayweo. I did not pronounce that correctly at all. Thank you very much for the follow. So this particular civic that I went for was Mechanist. The society has been preoccupied with the idea of metallic automatons since the early steam age. Although many said it could not be done, the first true robots left the assembly lines long before even rudimentary spaceflight was achieved. Start the game with 4 pops being robots, and with the technology to build more. Robot maintenance cost is reduced by 5%. So that was what let me get away with that. And I think we are going to go for a nice, happy, colonizable 25 size world. And seems reasonable enough for a colony. So you'll notice that I took a really big hit to my energy credits here, and it's not uncommon, and a lot of times I just run a deficit in these particular situations. Yeah, I mean, it's the first I've ever done this. I quite like it as a start, because I never really could make robots work for me in a way that I was entirely happy. There is an equivalent to the I think it's called syncretic evolution. There's an equivalent to that civic where basically your species sort of evolved contemporaneously with sort of this brutish serf species. And the idea is that they're effectively enslaved. So they're also like, it's basically like having the, it's the machinist or the mechanist version of only you've got like biological servants as opposed to robotic ones. I think that one thing that does prevent is sort of the materialist civilizations from becoming becoming the only ones that can have an equivalent. In this case, you just have to sort of manage the slavery mechanics. The thing is that, like, temperamentally, I usually don't like playing enslaving species. There are times that I've done it, but I generally feel quite bad when I do. And I think, I mean, for my part, I just like the fact that, like, for biological organisms, like, those things are just going to breed. If you can't find work for them, you're in trouble. Whereas robots, I can sort of build on my own time. And I think you probably have just noticed from sort of the way that I talk and my general temperament, like, I'm definitely somebody who prefers to sort of be in control and sort of decide what is important for me. So that was sort of my reasoning behind going for that particular civic. Initial analysis of the asteroid's composition points towards potentially interesting finds. We'll research them. If you don't mind, guys, I'm going to go and get a quick drink of water. I'm sorry to leave you like this. I'm not going to pause the game or anything like that. I normally have a break sign that I put up, but it's going to take mere moments. So I'm just going to leave the game on autopilot. Maybe we can find something that looks pretty. Where are you? Yeah, there we go. You can admire the beauty of Stellaris. I will be back in mere seconds with refreshment. See you guys in a little bit.
Colonization in progress.
Our colony ship has gently touched down on the mouth of a large river delta at one of the several continents that can be found on Despad Prime. This temperate forested region will serve as an ideal first landing site. The ship has been permanently converted into an administrative headquarters of the new settlement, and its reactor core is in the process of being removed so that it may serve as the colony's temporary power source. Hundreds of small tents and prefab shelters have sprung up around the former spaceship's massive hull as colonists begin to disembark in large numbers. The first Mishar city on an alien world. A great day for the Mishar Cooperative. So you also gain some engineering technology for founding your first colony. You notice that you have a very small sort of field of influence. I think probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to go for sort of my two ideal territories to sort of how do I put it? I'm gonna like plant my flag just so I can sort of absorb the planets that I want in my immediate area, and then we'll maybe start thinking about what the next immediate expansion options are, because I need to kind of come up with a good plan on how to efficiently expand out these colonies without breaking the bank. It appears that the asteroid R2937 and the surrounding debris originates from a former planet. Deep within the center of the asteroid, we find traces of extremely valuable minerals. There is also hints of bacterial life that has now died in the vacuum of space. This shows us the celestial body once bore the promise of life. Amazing. And where was that? So I'm not so sure that we're gonna have that within our borders. Yeah, I don't quite see how Ziff expands things out, but there's a couple of ways that we can actually incorporate that, because it's a very tasty system to have. I mean, I'll be paying for it in energy, but I think there's definitely some things that I can do with that. So one thing that I haven't done in this playthrough, and we will probably get to it fairly shortly, but if you take a look at this construction ship, so I have been focusing quite a bit on these habitable planets just because I really haven't had a start where I've had so many clustered together with generally desirable features. Actually, one thing I didn't do when I took a look at Dispad, I didn't see if the planet had any modifiers, because not all the modifiers are good. One of the things that your construction ship can do is build a, not an observation post, a frontier outpost. So you pay 3 energy and you pay 1 influence, so it is actually fairly important to keep factions happy in those particular cases. I was tempted to do the spaceport upgrade, but I kind of just want to get these colony ships off the assembly line. Again, the earlier I get them founded, the earlier I can take advantage of the bonus pops. Campaigning to elect a new chancellor is underway. The result will be announced in 2210-0401. This is actually a very good timing for me because I haven't started any of the expansion in terms of building new sort of new resource extractors. So if I get a mandate for research, for instance, I've more or less got that taken care of in the immediate planets. I think if we get a mining station mandate, we're going to have a little bit of trouble, but we can probably do well. Anyways, so let's say that I was in a bad spot. Let's say, you know, I had maybe a couple of colonizable planets up here, but then my only other option was sort of to the north here. And I'm like, well, how do I make a logical link? Or one thing that I might do here with so many desirable assets sort of in the immediate area, I might want to say, well, maybe I just want to add something to my borders, and I just simply don't have the means of colonizing desert worlds, or I don't have, the space, or any one of the reasons why you may not want to take that step. What you can do is you can use your ship to build a frontier outpost, and it has a fairly steep. It has a fairly steep energy cost, and you do need to keep an eye on your influence. So you can't do defensive pacts with everybody and then build frontier outposts all over the place and expect to do well. But this is a way that you can sort of have a little bit more control in terms of your immediate in your immediate area. On a star that has an energy resource, does not consume the resource itself, but produces energy instead. Absolutely true. Yes, I don't believe. I could be wrong though. Oh, hey, this is, sorry, my mistake. I didn't think this energy was on the star. But yes, you are, at the very least, it will make up the difference of the two. But you're right, it does serve as a resource extractor if it is something that that can do it. In general, though, you can expect this as being a costly expansion. That actually just gives me all the more reason to build that up. All right, science ship Trailblazer has encountered hostile pirate fleets in Dwillum and is currently attempting to evade them. So this is that fleet stance at work. And this is the event that I was looking for. So certain irrational and criminal elements in our society have left Oros to seek the outlaw's life in the far reaches of space. In a display of surprising ingenuity, these brigands have heavily modified and weaponized a large number of civilian starships. Our civilian shipping lanes are now being raided by this improvised starfleet, which identifies itself only as the Immortal Cabal. A prompt response is needed. These nonconformists will be dealt with. All right, so they've got a power of 164, we've got a power of 224, and we will tip the odds in our favor by bringing in an admiral. So generally I like going for young people just because they'll last longer. Unyielding is kind of tempting because hull points are ultimately what decide whether or not your ship dies. Yeah, she's the youngest, and the additional survivability is always nice. So we will deal with them right away. Actually, we can do even better than that. I expect these things will start flying out right away, so I won't need to fight them and their space station. We'll see. But yeah, so imagine I had my original fleet, the thing that I started off with. We can actually probably get away with building another. New ruler has been elected. First citizen Mona Robbins will rule until the next election, which will take place 10 years from now. And their mandate is orbital research. So exactly what I wanted. It's a little late to build another Corvette, but I'm still going for it. All right, so we lost the... You know what? It's probably on its way to the capital because there really isn't any... That or possibly... You know what? I don't think this makes any sense. I think... Oh my god, did I just elect my... Well, she did well for herself. I believe I just hired an admiral that got elected. All right. Congratulations. You are now extending the weapon range. All right. So I do kind of want to be prompt on this because they're going to try and take out my... They're going to try and take out this mining platform. Fortunately, we are on our way to dealing with the brigands. So we can get a little bit of information. Oh, no, we can't. We can't make any sense of this strange vessel. So sometimes you can do a quick scan and see what's going on those ships, but instead we'll just enjoy the fireworks. So you don't get to control the combat. I'm in a somewhat good state because they do have shields, but I've got kinetic weapons, so that'll be a pretty easy rip on their hulls. Unfortunately, I do think I'm going to lose at least one Corvette. You have an odds of success up here, but it's more or less out of your control. So I did wind up losing one ship. I might lose more than one, actually. We'll find out in a moment. You do have an option of retreating. This I am not going to take advantage of. But effectively here what you want to do is you can sort of think of this as a little bit of a game of rock, paper, scissors. If you've ever played Endless Space, this is actually very similar. So this will give you some stats in terms of output. Obviously, I did the amount of damage to the hull that is equivalent to destroying 4 of those things. Perhaps unsurprising. Decent hit ratio. I'm not quite sure what the deal was in terms of why they did so poorly. I generally don't do as... Okay, so it just looks like I'm very good at evasion. I'm not sure. What we'll do here is we'll just send this fleet off to repair. We've already got another Corvette on its way. And I actually kind of want to find out for myself whether or not you have to pay any maintenance on a frontier outpost, so I'm going to do that as well. We're doing okay for influence because our faction is happy, and we will only wind up... as soon as we can get one more species to trade with, they will only get happier. So it seems like a fairly decent time to put that kind of investment in. So one thing that has come up is there's some debris. This is an example of a timed mission. So in this case here, basically there's some... When you destroy a fleet, there's some stuff that's left over, and they were employing some technology that we don't have. So we're able to sort of get an idea of what's going on there, basically, what technology they were using against us. But if we don't research it in time, we're not able to take advantage of it. So what we're gonna do here is I'm just gonna queue. Actually, we won't even do that. All right, we got to flip this around. I sort of neglected this planet, so we'll do basic science lab. We'll clear... Oh, don't have the money to clear it out. And we're only losing energy because I built a second colony ship, but we're going to do that to grab... We're going to do this to grab some more land. Notice we established the colony, so we're back up, and then we're going to go back down because I'm building another one. So I'm not quite sure if it makes sense for me to go on this energy tile or an empty tile. I think I'm actually going to go here just because it will allow me to spread the bonus once I clear out this tile blockers. That may not have been the right decision, but once the second strike force is done building, or done repairing, we might throw in another Corvette. We're actually going to send that off to deal with the pirate base. And where's the other science ship?
System survey complete.
Have a great night, Elkanu. And if you ever have a chance to do some multiplayer in Stellaris, I will very happily, hang out with you and enjoy this wonderful game. Maybe it's also not a bad time to do a little bit of maybe the PSA stuff. This is probably more so for the non-veterans of the game. We are currently playing the multiplayer patch. Now that probably doesn't mean a whole lot doesn't really mean a whole lot for this playthrough, because this is just solo. This is more so kind of a very granular take on sort of my opening steps. It's why I haven't sped the game up too much, because I think there's a lot that you can unpack in this game. And again, I mean, I have quite a bit of time in the game, but I still feel like there's a lot that I can learn, and there's a lot in terms of efficiencies. And I feel like a lot of the I sort of feel like a lot of the problems that I've run into usually stem from a lack of planning in the opening. So it's a nice opportunity for me to do a little bit of learning, as well as encouraging some of my friends who might consider this game to look intimidating, to instead sort of say it's like, you know, it's not rocket science, right? The rocket science happens behind the scenes in this screen. Anyways, that was so. If you do want to help out, and I mean, again, these games are best when you play with friends, right? There's, whether you like to role play stuff or whether you just sort of like having, there's two ways that you can look at this. You can either say a game where somebody else, you know, is making the same mistakes as you, and so, you know, you don't necessarily have an AI that's going to barrel you over with superior play. Or if you just have a friend that you kind of want to gang up with, or there's all sorts of reasons why you want to play this with somebody. But new multiplayer technology is being tested. If you want to enable that, you can go into your Steam library. You can right-click on Stellaris, click Properties, and then there'll be a tab called Betas. If you select the 1.7.2 beta, it will show you, or basically it'll download an update to the game. It'll include things like this friends list, by the way, Forever Alone. If you ever want to play a game, feel free to add. This is a community service thing. It does help to have, by the way, I should have said that we researched that that debris, so that just gave me a bit of a boost to research. I think when I get back to the research menu, I'll show what effect that had. I don't think we have any immediate... I don't think I have any immediate research projects I can get this guy off onto. So let's take a look at some of the systems that I might be able to get some goodies off of because of that frontier outpost we're building. Anyways, so it helps. Obviously, multiplayer stuff tends to test better when people are actually using it, and you leave any bug logs. So for instance, I notice I still get a friends list whenever I click on the wiki. But it's not purely just out of the goodness of your heart that you do this. You do get a special lobster people portrait for your species if you help out with that. Another thing that might have gone overlooked, especially if you got this in the Humble Bundle, is if you go to the store page and you select the... how much longer am I streaming? If I can, another hour. But I normally give myself a hard stop at about midnight, but I also don't like streaming less than 3 hours. So I can guarantee you another half hour, and I'm going to do my best to do another hour. But yeah, anyways, guys, so if the multiplayer beta sounds scary, understandable. But one other thing that you may want to know, this game has just recently enjoyed its 1-year anniversary, and there's actually people I know who've been playing for the year. and haven't experienced it. But if you click on the Stellaris Anniversary portraits, you can download those. There's, I think, 8. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My bad. There's 6 free portraits which you can get. You only need to push that. And of course, if you go to the DLC section, maybe is worth mentioning, I am playing the game with all the DLC enabled. But if you are interested in a rough guideline in terms of what you'll be getting, the original game soundtrack, the beautiful soundtrack by Andreas Waldetoft, this can be playing in your digital audio player at any hour that you want without associated Stellaris. There is the Plantoid Species Pack. Now, I'd say this is broadly a cosmetic upgrade. However, I will say that if you are the same sort of species type, so humanoids and humanoid, I believe there is a diplomacy bonus. So it has a very minor contribution to game mechanics, but no more so than anything else that you've experienced in the game. You get the species pack because you like the look of the plantoids. It wasn't something that I got originally, but I did actually eventually jump in with both feet and picked it up. The other 2 bits of DLC that I want to draw your attention to are the Leviathan Story Pack. So if you like stuff like this, the sort of the readings and the sort of the experiences that you have, sort of immersing yourself in the world, that was a really big thing that the Leviathans pack gave, although it did also introduce the cuties portraits. So if you like the really cute looking aliens like the gecko and the starfish and things like that, that is the pack that has those. I believe that's the case. And then it also did unlock that was the patch where the Leviathans were introduced, which we haven't encountered yet. I think I'll maybe talk about those when they come up. But you can sort of consider that as, this is unfair to that DLC, but I'd say more of the same and expansive. And I quite liked it. I actually thought that was a really strong DLC for the start. But the first full expansion has just recently been released, which was Utopia. And if you're a bit of a nerd like me, so for those of you who are new to the cast, my background is actually, I have a degree in economics. I worked in political economy, so I really drink up a lot of this, governments and political systems, and I love how these games sort of model these ideas. So as soon as I looked at Utopia, I was absolutely sold. But that will give you everything from new species portraits, that gives you access to a lot of the cool government features inside of the game. For those of you who are new to the Paradox style games, one of the great things that they do is when they release a new DLC, there is also a patch with free, sort of the free content that comes along with it. And if you want to know what you get in a given piece of DLC, you can obviously rely on the nerd who's busy talking about this game rather than playing it. Or, unfortunately, my mouse is offset. I wonder, maybe the search will help me here. Nope, can I expand the window? All right, sorry guys, I'm gonna use my real browser for this. I believe if you click on the wiki entry that shows, that actually lists the DLC, so I'm clicking on the Utopia DLC right now. Yeah, it's got the expansion features and the freeze features. So I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but for instance, if you want to play a Hive Mind, which was a really interesting addition, I would have done a Hive Mind, except that I wanted to do something that was maybe a little more new player friendly. You are going to have to pay for Utopia. Now, I don't think any single feature on its own is worth the price of admission, but in combination, I think it's a very well-priced DLC. And then if you are on the fence and you want to say, well, what am I getting myself into, 5 years from now when I haven't bought any DLC, what am I going to be getting in these patches? The wiki does a nice job of delineating between the things that you pay for and the things that you don't. But obviously, I wouldn't be playing this game and I wouldn't have the playtime in the game that I have if I didn't think the DLC was worth it. But you're not just given an instruction to buy, you're actually given the tools to make an informed decision about whether or not the DLC is for yours. So, but my capsule reviews would be Leviathans is if you just sort of want the same experience that you've had and sort of broaden it out, flesh it out, get some new story elements. Along with some extras. Again, that's unfair to Leviathans, but it's my shorthand. Whereas if you're looking for something to like dig in deep and to just fundamentally change some new ideas about the game, strongly recommend that you pick up Utopia. The readings originate from a small research outpost, which the Mishar Cooperative has no records establishing or indeed authorizing. On the surface of Uxfribi 3b, it is staffed by one Mishran scientist, a fairly talented and industrious one if their research on... Sorry, I'm so bad at pronouncing these titles. Ufrixi 3b is anything to go by. There's a problem with regards to their identity, however. We've been unable to match them against official state records, and they refuse to identify themselves save for stating that they are in exile. They've expressed interest in returning to Oros and serving the Mishar Cooperative directly on the condition that the ISS Pathfinder immediately depart Uxrifi 3b and no Mishran ships ever return there. Alright, so either we can gain an immediate bonus of 149, or I can add the exile to the leader pool. I'm kind of all full up on researchers right now, so I think I'm just going to go for the greed and take the points. All right. I also get to see some fireworks in a little bit. Cold and empty. There's nothing unusual about the research outpost itself. There's little but temporary shelter erected against the savage elements, allowing surface-level planetary study for a limited time before it wears down and the conditions become untenable. The outpost on Zukfriri 3b is nearing the end of its lifespan, but the planet's intense chill has yet to critically degrade the impermanent structure. The equipment, functional, cheap, and intended to be abandoned, is well used, and the local databanks are filled with detailed and ultimately mundane accounts of the planet, as well as the simple experiments that were carried out in its harsh environment. Curiously, no examination seems to have been made of the mineral outcropping of the outpost foundations rest on. Scans by the ISS Pathfinder indicate that the geological formation, a mountain mostly buried under ice, may be partially hollow. More alarmingly, Science Officer Kang Shen reports that the sole inhabitant of the outpost, the mysterious exile, has gone missing and is nowhere to be found. So, I should be tending to my planets here, but I do kind of want to watch I do really like watching this stuff pull off. I will probably save your eyes. We'll use the unit card as a shield. So this one, we don't have too much to fear from the outpost here, right? We've got 86 military power versus 265. Because we're using kinetic weapons, we do have the problem of getting in range. So we are gonna, what would make some sense for us would be to either get some shields or some armor, just to basically keep things, keep us from getting obliterated before we get into range. But in this case, we should be able to wrap up the asteroid outpost hopefully without losing a unit, but we may not be so lucky. It's a great looking game though, right? Hey, 1-4, I wasn't sure if you're still here. Thanks for hanging out. I should say too, I mean, obviously I've been monologuing about the game, and it certainly doesn't take a lot of effort to get me talking, but did anybody have any specific questions about the game? Because I did, I know a couple of friends weren't able to catch the cast on for those of you who are new to the cast, we always do a Paradox game on Mondays. We've been doing a lot of Crusader Kings 2, but I felt like it was time to go back to Stellaris because of the Humble sale. Or the Humble bundle or monthly or whatever it was. But I sort of know, like, I've been recording this sort of with a mind to what their particular questions about the game was, and just trying to encourage them to start off. But obviously it's one of the first times I've done a cast where I've sort of had sort of a VOD in mind. So if any of you guys have anything in particular that you wanted to know, either about the decisions that I made or just generally what got me into the game, why I think it's interesting, why I've continued to play it, I'm happy to do a little more Q&A. If not, I mean, obviously it's my job to keep the thing going, so I'm happy to have lurkers as well, but it's a good opportunity to ask. I mean, the start of a game is really a really good time to learn a little bit about people's approaches to the game. So I'm happy to discuss. Second Strike Force has destroyed a pirate station in the Dwitham system and has recovered the Strong Room module. So we gain 80 minerals for that, 50 energy credits. We'll probably use that to make a droid, and then I think we're just gonna hang off on. I think we're gonna hang off on sending a science ship to research that right now. What's the queue look like? So one's basically at the end of its... Yeah, so we'll just send that thing to research afterwards. Okay, so we've been neglecting my planets. I think it's time for me to consider what I'm going to do with my construction ship. I also want to make sure that my planet is roughly the way I want it to be. Clear out the physics research. We'll build a farm. Also energy hubs, or energy nexus. Okay, so I can build deflectors. This is something I was going to mention before. So because we did some research, because we researched the fragments, we're actually able to start some research on deflectors. I think this is the most sensible out of them. It's yes. It's tempting to go for the AI-controlled colony ships just because we still have so many opportunities for expansion, but I think this is relatively inexpensive, and it will also it will help my survivability of ships. So I think we're going to go for that, and we'll get nanocomposite armor next month. So let's make some more decisions on Oros. So I think what we'll do here, we'll build an energy grid. Let's hold off on clear. I tend to get... So this is a bad habit I get into, is I start sort of clearing everything. Alright, so I can do level 2 armor right away, which I'm not excited about. I do like the idea of ion thrusters. I also like the idea of upgraded coil guns, but improved evasion seems like a really nice thing to have, especially for ships that need to get close. So we'll do the ion thruster, and then hopefully we'll get an opportunity to upgrade our weapons really quick. Shifting sands. The sand dunes on Jaltham 2A are treacherous indeed. The sand is so finely grained that it almost could be called liquid, and it swallows anything that sets down upon it. Settling here would take a heavy toll on personnel as well as structures. With time, we could probably learn how to work around these conditions. As the saying went, eventually our castle would stand upon the old one. Unfortunate. So where was this? Well, it's not this. We were not gonna inhabit that anyway, so. So you know what? This is not a smart use of my. If I'm clearing this tile, then I should be putting this human on. Oh, non-aggression pact in invitation. All right, well, that's sensible. Oh, and we've got our next level. So I think at this point we should do the courier network. So this is not bad for me just because it means sort of peace within this little sector of the galaxy. This is something that could possibly eventually turn into a federation, which is good because the Otaga Union is big and scary and not obviously something that will play nice. I'm reluctant to build another colony ship right now because the colonies that we can potentially get, notice they all exist within our space right now. So we're going to be able to develop all of these resources before we consider any additional expansion. And then on top of that, we are going to need to we're going to need to build some sectors if we want to do too much expansion along those lines. So we're going to just hold off on that for a little while, and we have some opportunities to do other expansion. So I think what we'll start off with is we'll fulfill the research mandate, and then we are going to exploit the hell out of all of these mining resources. I'm just trying to think, does it even make sense for me to start with that research mandate? The mummified remains of a single individual belonging to a previously unknown mammalian species has been found drifting in high orbit over Jeltham 4. This being is dressed in what appears to be a flight suit, complete with a helmet, and maybe a fighter pilot that ejected from some ancient battle only to be forgotten and left behind. Our study of the corpse has provided some interesting data. 60 Society research. Alright, well, for 5 engineering, this seems like a good place to start. Let's just take a quick look at this frontier outpost. So yeah, that's definitely earning me the 2 points. And if I go to my budget, so it looks like I am still paying for the it looks like I'm still paying for the frontier outpost, but obviously a 1 energy frontier outpost is much better than a 3 energy frontier outpost. And this has of course secured the mineral resources. This secured us Detonal. It's definitely got us a lot of stuff. So there might be an argument even for me to try expanding out to Swalmonia 2 and Trappist. I still need to kind of decide what I'm going to do along those lines. But in the meantime, let's make some decisions about how we're going to build up this planet. I think the science lab is a good place to start. All right, now as for Despad Prime, Special project failed. Sadly, our linguists have been unable to understand the entirety of the alien language used in the old documents found on Detonal 1A. However, they managed to translate the essentials, which has given us a glimpse into the culture that they originated from. And we've gained 80 influence. So I think what I want to do here is I want to start building some robots to... Well... You know what, the food actually makes a little more sense right now, so let's say... I'm going to rearrange this a bit later, but... And then this colony's just finished as well, so we're back up to 13 production. And I think the sensible path here... Again, I want to take advantage of my my early robots. All right, getting closer on seeing what our prospects are here. And
System survey complete.
I really should be building up my fleets. All right. How do I want to play this? So I should upgrade the spaceport because this will give me the Corvette. This will give me the construction yards. I should eventually build spaceports on those planets, but we'll hold off for now. Oros is pretty much developed where I want it to go. I don't want to upgrade any of these tiles yet. Eventually I'll build a power plant here, but I'm sort of taking advantage of the diversity of these tiles right now.
Construction complete.
All right, what kind of research can I put down? Looks like we got a 4. See, the challenge now is I'm actually going to need to think a bit about my my energy consumption because I'm going to be building a big batch of bots. As well as sort of expanding out these expanding out all of this this infrastructure. So I want to make sure I'm hitting the right balance. Jayon, thank you very much for that follow. So, through our surveys of habitable worlds, our biologists have collected a vast amount of data on alien life forms. Many of our older theories on the development of life have been disproved, and our scientific community has had to build new models from scratch. Our most interesting findings are being displayed on the newly dedicated Museum of Exobiology on Oros. The public is enthralled, and many donations have come in to aid the continued search for strange life forms. So we gained some society research as well as energy credits. This is one thing I regret a little bit about the way that I built all of this. So one thing I tend to notice at the start is that I develop a fairly decent surplus of energy credits, and it's more so the monthly amount that starts digging at me just because of all the infrastructure that I built. So one really nice way of me spending all of my energy credits is to get the upgrade from the traditions in Prosperity, the private colony ships. So in this case, this means that you're spending energy, which you can kind of think of as currency in this game. This is something that you can use to help your expansion, and then your minerals will be dedicated to doing things like building out your military or something like that. I'm definitely doing something that I don't recommend, which is to have my military at anything less than full capacity when playing. But I sort of got bit by the expansion bug, and I guess the other thing is I don't feel really threatened right now. So the Holfir League and the Hanmur Interstellar Nation didn't just agree to non-aggression pacts, but they, and one of them at least, wanted to form a defensive pact. So in this situation, I don't feel particularly compelled to put a lot of investment into my military. Now that could come back to bite me, but the logic that I've had here is that because I'm in a position where I can afford to do this early expansion, where I can afford to sort of build out my capacity, this is sort of an opportunity for me to what's the best way to say this? I don't need to waste my resources on sort of defending my property. Like I have to worry about pirates. It's not that I've completely ignored everything, but in this case, because I don't feel particularly threatened, and I know that I can get by with this force that I have right now, I think I'm going to pause just so I can review my plans. Because I know I can sort of get away with not feeling the pressure from having maybe a strong or aggressive neighbor. It seems to make more sense to put those resources into things that will earn me more resources. So when the time comes to build a fleet, I can either build the same fleet faster, or I can build a better fleet at the same amount of time. There's a few different ways of looking at that. So clearing tile blockers is not a bad place to go. I'm not quite convinced that I still need to do upgraded buildings. I feel like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can take advantage of. Additional border range is a bit tempting because that will add a couple of sectors that have one sort of artifacts that I want. It'll also do things like, add a couple of these energy planets in, which we're just shy of getting. It'll also make it a little bit easier to capture a planet like this. So let's see what we'll get. Basically, I want to... You can notice the way we've done this, right? I haven't felt a need to do frequency tuning yet. I sort of said hydroponics, nice, but maybe not the biggest thing that I need to work out right now. So I'm deciding between galactic ambitions and dangerous wildlife. Realistically, let's see what I'm giving up if I were to give up the wildlife. So notice here, 2 empty tiles. Well, I'm not really... My concern here is definitely not about space. So I'm losing effectively nothing, at least at this point, if I do that upgrade. What about here? Well, this is a little bit of a better argument. One, because it's both mineral and food. But also because just space is so tight on this planet. Like I'm pretty much gonna hit the population max before I really want to here. So the question is this one tile worth the expansion opportunity that will come, and I know for sure I'm at least going to get, 4 energy out of this. Is 2 mineral, 1 food worth it? Well, getting 4 energy is going to allow me to build, at the very least, 1, even if I just, it's a break even of saying that I can build 1 mining station, I can ignore everything else, I'm just going to put the rest into science, and I still come out ahead. So it seems to me here that I don't have a compelling enough reason to do this tile blocker. If we take a look at some of my other expansion options, again, you can sort of expand this out, but that's already a big assumption that I'm going to expand out to these planets right away, rather than maybe take advantage of some of these expansion opportunities. So just overall, I'm not convinced of the utility of the tile blocker. This does have immediate utility, even though it does take me, it's going to take me longer to research it. So I say the border range is what I want to go for. That was, again, do I normally like sit down and obsess that much about this stuff when I play the game? Not really. And for some reason there's battle debris that I forgot to research. Oh, this is the level 5 thing. I don't normally sit down and like really, it's not this angst-filled, midnight of the soul as I'm trying to figure out what, what I'm doing with my, expansion. But there is a certain amount that I've sort of internalized, and I like of thinking, yeah, more or less McReaver. It's
Construction complete.
I like to return the. I know the language is maybe one that might not be, depending on the term is potentially a little disparaging. Our deep space tracking arrays on DSPAD Prime have made an alarming discovery. A large asteroid is heading towards the planet on a direct collision course. Should it impact the service, the consequences would be disastrous. The asteroid must be destroyed before it's too late. Well, now we get to find out whether or not my underinvestment in the military was worth it. But yeah, the idea that I had in starting this game, McReaver, was to basically kind of take some of the original kind of like Robert Owen kind of writings and imagine that if the space intelligentsia could actually do what those frontiers did, that they would they would overcome the problem of the fact that just a whole bunch of intellectuals really don't want to chop down trees. That they would be able to put it forward. And no, McReaver, in this case, I went for, I definitely not doing Hearts of Iron communism. In this case, it was, I decided to go for the egalitarian ideas. It was partly just so I could justify making the species intelligent. So I decided that I would have, union representation. We would maybe take the dialectical materialism parts of communism, and that we would found an egalitarian society around it rather than the boot stepping on a human face forever. And again, I know it's I remember once upon a time there was a forum post which was sort of dedicated to how annoyed they were that they couldn't properly implement communism. I'm satisfied with this. It's my species. I can make whatever I want. You prefer playing Space North Korea? Well, that's the thing that I like about this game. The one thing that I tend to notice is I have a tendency to play a very militaristic or otherwise sort of dystopian species. So I thought it would be kind of nice to try something a little bit different, something that didn't rely so heavily on aggressive expansion. I don't know, I'm enjoying this. This is definitely a much more relaxed start to the game, but especially because this is geared to sort of introducing some of my friends to the game. A lot of them got this in the Humble Monthly. it's I definitely wish I got a start like this when I first started playing. Space Caboose, yeah, Uncle Elias, exactly. A small celestial object with pronounced gaseous particulate tails was recently observed in the Savant system. Its passing was uneventful. Acknowledged. Now, I've never gotten this event as a spiritual species. I think in this case I'm going to go for the geothermal fracking, just because it's low cost.
Construction complete.
I probably should diversify my weapons. I never really did explain that, but
System survey complete.
I want to see this thing blow up.
Anomaly found.
By chance, we stumbled upon a faint alien signal during the survey of the moon. The source appears to be a small object in orbit. The signal contains no message. Could it be a distress transponder? I'm sure Bruce Willis is somewhere in one of these fleets. You always get comments cited as spiritualist. Do you mind if I ask Jayod what the flavor text is? I'm assuming this is a throwback to Europa Universalis 4, where at least in the early parts of the game, comet sighted just means that you lose stability and cry. But yeah, Uncle Elias. I mean, the only thing that I can say is I will admit, first up, one of the most common things that I get when I play Stellaris is people asking me to make the speed go up. And certainly I am very easy to get off track in terms of... I'm going to have to pause on this. Very easy to get off track when it comes to topics, so there's probably going to be a fair amount of fluff, but I think the easy thing on this one is for the VOD, you know, it's not difficult to fast forward. Just look for the part where you think things became interesting, and then you can go back in. Use a lot of mods in your game? Yeah, so far, I mean, I'm poorly suited to Paradox in some cases because I've only really gotten into modding because of Paradox, and it was Kaiserreich which finally pushed me over the edge. But I also think in introducing the game to people, I don't think it's bad to say, here's what you get out of the box. So, not really paying attention to it most of the time. I think it's Divine Blessing. No, that's fine. As more curious, I mean, I'm sure I can just look it up on the wiki. The Uncle Elias, I mean, the other thing too, if you have any questions, like if there's something that's really been bothering you, I notice a lot of people ask a lot of questions about the sector system. But I'm happy to do Q&A for the next little while as I'm going through the cast. I think I've probably got another half hour in me, and we can call it. But also thank you everybody for being such a nice audience. I know I always roll the dice a little bit whenever I pick up a new strategy game. I mean, I've done Stellaris before, but it's whenever I start a new one, I know it's always a little tricky to find the angle. Your space commies are fanatic pacifists with a civic that allows liberation wars and a war goal to demilitarize opposing military powers. That was one big thing that I learned was, once I learned that pacifist didn't mean you could, like you just couldn't go to war, but it just restricted the type of war that you could go on. That was actually one of my more successful playthroughs. I was very surprised by that because I have a tendency to think very matter-of-factly about it, right? It's like you build a bigger army and you go and you bulldoze the other guys, and those other guys learned your strategies, and so now you need to change your weapon systems to be able to do the same thing. But there's a lot more nuance to the game than I appreciated at the start, so... Hey! StarCraft's a great game. You played the demo a while back, been thinking about picking up during a sale, just seemed too big for me. Oh, Uncle Elias, this is... Out of all of this... sorry, I'll make a technology decision and then I'll talk about that, because I actually think this is the friendliest game to get into for Paradox. It's also unlike some of the other Paradox games, so this is probably the most 4X out of it. So if you're comfortable playing Civilization, if you're comfortable playing Endless Space, those are definitely... Like, this is, you know, Endless Space ++. It's you're going to feel comfortable from that, and then there's going to be more, and as long as you're willing to put the time in to learn, this game will reward you with hundreds of hours of plays. So, What I think the best tradition to research first, you looked into Utopia, might pick it up soon. So I have a few thoughts on that. I went for something I don't normally go for, M. Night Slamdown, but I'm just going to take a quick second here. I'm thinking improved deflectors. Assist research isn't useful to me right now because I'm still exploring the universe. No, fusion power, because I'm going to be building a lot of deflectors. Okay, in the order that I was bringing up. Oh yeah, so traditions. What I went for, so M. Night Slamdown, it depends on my species. As with anything, like I really don't think these games have obvious first things to do. Circumstance will always usually give you something better. So what I wound up with here was a nice cluster of a lot of colonizable planets. And so for the first time ever, I went for expansion first. I tend to be very sort of material focused. I tend to like to build up lots of infrastructure. I tend to like to build up a lot of, the means of production. I like to be able to have large populations and the means to work them and basically everything as efficient as possible. So for those playthroughs, I tend to start with prosperity. I also usually have a faction that will want me to adopt prosperity, so that's another reason for me to do that, because having inexpensive mining stations when you're building so many of them is a really good one, and then you stack on those benefits by like reducing your ship costs and upkeeps. So this is a really nice way of just sort of saying that you can wring the most out of your resources. But I've also had times where I start with discovery first. I've always been a little uncertain about that one, but I mean, things like the scientist recruitment, the researches, especially researches for surveying planets, I actually think that's a fairly decent, start. So I think my go-tos have usually been expansion, prosperity, or discovery. I've been doing prosperity a lot recently. But like I said, the circumstances said to me that expansion seemed to be a really obvious step. So, and I'm very happy with the decision that I made. And looked into Utopia. You might pick it up soon. I think hive minds are the main reason why everybody gets Utopia. But there's a lot of stuff to love in Utopia. I think it's there's a lot of things. Oh God, I was wondering why stuff wasn't happening. I think Stellaris has had some really strong DLC releases. So if you think about it, right, Leviathans came out and you got Horizon Signal for free. And yeah, for anybody who's new to this game, if you've not seen the Horizon Signal event, you are in for an absolute treat. Like, don't let anybody talk to you about it. Don't let anybody, do not check anything about the Horizon Signal until you've experienced it at least once. That story had me second guessing everything. It's written by Alexis Kennedy, who did Sunless Sea and Fallen London. That's just some incredible writing in there, and he uses a lot of the mechanics in a really smart way to create a sense of uncertainty and foreboding. I loved every second that I've played of it. So that came for free alongside Leviathans. And then Utopia, I thought, was really just the nice, hey, here's the potential that this game has. And if you guys are interested in this, definitely check on the Paradox website, paradoxplaza.com. Their forums, they have their developer diaries, and they're pretty open about the directions that they're thinking about taking the game. And McReaver has it exactly right. Like, there's a lot of circumstances that will tell you what the best tradition is. You used to play spiritualist authoritarian because no one questions your ethics. Hive minds don't question ethics either. An abandoned life pod was detected in close orbit of Ruka 3A. It is covered in scorch marks, presumably from when the pod's mothership exploded, and preliminary scans suggest that it was built more than 5,000 years ago. The crew of the ISS Pathfinder managed to open the pod, revealing the withered remains of a reptilian alien clad in a resplendent uniform. Clutched in some of its claws was a small picture of another individual of the same race, possibly a mate or revered leader. Interesting. Science officer Marilyn Brockbank has gained maniacal. Actually, I also noticed a couple of my scientists are able to start researching these these higher level. I thought they were able to research the higher level stuff. I can do at least one. So it was Uncle Elias. Will you fight the space Nazis? Well, we don't have too many space Nazis, and the only thing close to space Nazis that we have right now are too strong. So, although maybe not as large as I thought they were. But yeah, definitely the space Nazis are they're going to be left alone. Live and let live is what I say until my navy gets large enough. Should you get the Darkest Dungeon? Do you like turn-based strategy? Actually, so Magma, if I told you that Darkest Dungeon was basically a really cool implementation of Final Fantasy combat, would that be an appealing game to you? Leaving aside the buzzword of really cool. The asteroid that was approaching Despad Prime on a collision course has been destroyed. With their doom averted, our jubilant citizens on the planet have taken to the streets in celebration. A scan of the remaining fragments have also revealed that the asteroid consisted largely of valuable minerals. We have collected what we could, and we've gained 380, which is a beautiful shot in the arm for my economy. Let's waste it on frivolous expenditure. See, McRear, I don't know that much about combat in the game, unfortunately, so let's... Well, no, that's too irresponsible to completely ignore my infrastructure needs, so we'll... Let's get just a quick evaluation of... All right. No, this is dumb. Yeah, I'm going to build a lot of robots on this planet, I think. And then... Power plant here. We've still got 511, so... We'll do one spaceport. And I think we'll spend the rest on corvettes. Yeah, so Uncle Elias has, I think, done you a good thing by sort of talking about that. Okay, Darkest Dungeon had me at that really incredible voiceover, and it happens that that style of game appeals to me. I like turn-based games. I think its aesthetic and what the game is about is really appealing to me. But I can definitely say so. If you don't like games that have if the game is designed to put you into bad situations and see how you handle them. So if you're easily frustrated, Darkest Dungeon is not a great option. If you also, I mean, obviously like the basic genre things. If you don't like turn-based, if you don't like sort of roguelike-ish, I don't even know if I can call them roguelike-ish elements, but if you don't like permadeath or something like that, so if you cry when you lose your troopers in XCOM, that may not be a good recommendation. But I will say it's a very inventive game. When I lived in Vancouver, I actually got to meet a couple of the Red Hook people at some Twitch meetups, which was very rewarding, and they're just really fun to hang around. I don't know them well, just I kind of got to see them. And I'm like, I enjoy the game quite a bit, and it's one that I sort of feel it streams very well, and it's one that I think
Construction complete.
like I find it something that I can sort of play with without too heavy of a time investment. So currently, how weapon scale on corvettes? Naked corvettes are better due to the money that it saves and the sheer numbers that you get. Okay. The streamers who you've watched all play Darkest Dungeon seem to enjoy it. Yeah. Well, actually, they did a really interesting thing on that game as well. So the people who did the audio for them, Power Up Audio, came with a recommendation basically saying, hey, let's let's do, I think they called it the ancestral bestowment. But basically the idea here was that they would do like special recordings. So again, like the remind yourself that overconfidence is is an insidious kill. Oh, what was it? Overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer or something like that. The Wayne June voiceover, there were a bunch of streamers who had streamed the game during its early access period, and they gave a bunch of custom kind of like shout outs and things. So Jesse Quill, my mod and a very dear friend of this cast, that's another person alongside El Canoe and Johnny Big Time that I would recommend to follow if you more so if you like variety streams. They're not very big strategy casters, but they're really friendly and welcoming people. Jess has a background in psychology, which I think she does very well for story-based games. Johnny Big Time has got he's very charismatic, and he's got a wonderful sense of humor, which I think adds a lot to his casts. But so if you join, I think it's her.
Construction complete.
I don't remember exactly it's like Game Wisp or something like that. But when you do that, you actually hear the Darkest Dungeon announcer saying, "Welcome to the Collective." And there's a few. I know Kalusha, Warwick TV. I think Lethal Frag got one. There's quite a few reasonably well-known streamers who have that. And I just thought that was a really smart and really that was just a really interesting way of doing that and giving back to the community. As per First Citizen Mona Robbins' mandate, additional research stations have been constructed. So we did what we wanted with our construction ship. I think the next step here is going to be to get some energy again. I need the money. After analyzing the debris left behind from the ancient battle fought above Stenlar 5A, we have learned that 4 alien empires contemporary with the Cybrex pooled their forces together in a desperate attempt to halt the advancing fleets of the machine consciousness. Judging by small amounts of Cybrex debris that was produced by the battle, they were not successful. This is, again, one thing I've sort of left this as implicit, but this is one of the biggest reasons to get into Stellaris, is just the... if you don't want to engage with the story stuff at all, you can completely reduce this game to just a series of menus and button presses. And that's fine, right? Like, I think everybody comes to these games with their own sort of interests, their own priorities. And it's, I think Paradox has made a game that's just... it's big enough and it's interesting enough that there's room for all sorts of play styles. But for my part, I definitely really love sort of drinking in, both in terms of just sort of imagining my my species. I've done a little less of that. I don't like role play in terms of like, speak dialogue for my species or anything like that. But I definitely try to get in character. And try to make decisions sort of consistent with the ethics and the ideals of a given species that I'm working with. All right, I think it's time to upgrade my coil guns. That was one I had on my eye for a while. That's why I didn't go into a lot of detail in terms of sort of the... Oh, this is interesting. It's a nice big continental world just waiting to be... waiting to be absorbed. So what I might wind up doing is just sort of sectoring all of this stuff out and expanding sort of like 2 antenna. We'll see what the resources look like over here, but I think that might be a way I can kind of get a handle on this, because we're committing ourselves to actually quite a bit of work. And I still have all these planets to colonize. On the plus side, though, like once we get everything up and running, we're going to do quite well for ourselves on resources. One of the reasons I'm prioritizing energy so much is this is really one of the big bottlenecks that I run into in this game. I tend to find I run out of energy a lot, and that can get aggravated quite a bit by having all of these robot units. Ah, damn it. I need to remember. So those things are going to cost me, I think, about 0.7. So in this case, like, it makes a lot of sense. Beyond the fact that it costs quite a bit in terms of energy, which I already have, like, it doesn't make any sense at all for me to be building mining platforms where I could be building robots here, right? Overall, so a mining platform is going to cost me 1 energy. And for these ones, it's going to gain me 2 mineral resources. These robots are going to cost me 1 energy, or sorry, 0.7 energy and 50 mineral resources. So the cost in setting up is lower, acknowledging that I have an energy credit surplus, so I'm ignoring that cost. And then on top of that, I have I just have so much undeveloped land. And then, of course, I can build new colony ships and expand out there. I could technically just run and colonize these as well. What I've got up here is my directly controlled colonized systems. It says our bureaucratic system limits how many colonized systems we can control directly with full efficiency. This limit can be increased by technology, buildings, and some government forms. Planets that belong to sectors do not count towards the cap. Go to planets and sectors to manage sectors. So effectively what this is all about is you can sort of hand off control to the AI and say, I want you to manage this, and you actually get to decide the rates of taxation and such. Not only is it quite a granular system, but they've actually added a level of control that wasn't there before in the game. So this was something that I think they did a really good job of improving. And what you get now is sort of I think it's a system that's still poorly understood. I tend to notice that it's the one that I get a lot of questions on. But I have been told that I explain it in a way that people sort of feel like they can make some decisions. And this is one of the things I really want to encourage, because we are getting kind of close to the end of our time. I think I'd be pretty I have to be up quite early tomorrow. So it's 1 a.m. for me, or about 5 minutes to 1. I don't mind, cutting out on a little bit of sleep, but it's kind of irresponsible for me to go any later, because that's the time that my alarm doesn't potentially wake me up at. So maybe I'll recap a little bit. First of all, for those of you who are looking to learn the game, and especially for those of you who are on the fence about whether or not to buy this game, I'd encourage you to come back. Any streamer is going to say that, obviously. Let's take a look here. So he wants 46 energy credits and star charts. Oh no, sorry, he gives me 46 energy credits. I don't really need the energy credits, and my star charts are sort of, that's my secret sauce. So I think we will decline this for now. Because if I give that to them, then they're just going to wind up trading it off with all these other guys. So, but yeah, so I mean, any streamer is going to tell you come back. Like, obviously, that is a fairly low value statement on my part. But if you're on the fence about the game, and you want to get an idea about what's going on with it, as long as you're willing to watch, I'm going to go through my thought process in terms of how I play the game. I'm going to talk about what has either worked for me or what I think is an interesting way to take it. I will definitely talk about a lot of things that interest me about this game. And I think for those of you who are regulars, I think it's fair to say that I'm not overselling to say that, I tend to talk a lot about sort of the ideas behind the game that interest me. For this one, I think we'll actually start doing the upgraded power plants, because I need to start churning out some more robots. I think also building up some corvettes might be an idea. I don't really want to build any science labs yet on these planets. Located in a remote part of Sturil 5, the science team of the ISS Pathfinder has found an out-of-place metallic tablet. It contains basic information about a distant system, using illustrations and what appears to be a periodic table. Science Officer Kang Shen has been able to use the information to deduce the location and potential resources of the system. Ah, cool. Ah, so we are at... This is actually... I think we'll pause here because we need to make a decision about what we're going to do with these resources. But anyways, so yeah, for those of you who are on the fence about the game, I will try and give you as honest of a perspective on it. You already know that I like it, so I think the best thing that I can do is give you the specific reasons why I like it, why I think it's an interesting game, why I think it's a good game. If you are looking to learn the game, I'll also encourage you to come back because I'm going to be doing this every Monday for the foreseeable future. I try to start 7 Eastern time, although I do give a flexible start time between about 7 to 9. This is just a pure work thing. I like sharing these games with people, and it always discourages me a little bit of my friends when they watch a game like this. They're like, it looks so cool, and I love watching you play it, but I could never play a game like this. Because I really do think, like, I learned Crusader Kings on stream, and I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and then I played Europa Universalis, and I mean, for those of you who were here when you heard I said I was an economist, Victoria too obviously touched me in all the right places. Hearts of Iron 4 is probably the most, it's like the last one that I've gotten into, and Stellaris is just another wonderful continuation in that. And like I said earlier, I think this is the one that's most friendly to new players because it's similar to other 4X style games, so there's sort of symmetric starts, and there's a really nice canvas on which you can tell, your science fiction story, however you want to do that. So it's open to a lot of different play styles, and, I'm doing Iron Man. I debated about it because it's sometimes nice to be able to reload a save and go back to where you were. But if you have any questions, if you own this game and you're motivated to play and then you find it frustrating, do come back, because I always play Paradox games on Mondays, but it's going to be Stellaris for the foreseeable future, at least until there's, maybe another big release that comes out. I know Death or Dishonor is coming out in a little bit, but I might sequester that to maybe its own stream. But yeah, the biggest thing is that I like sharing this game, and I think if you are intimidated by what you see, this game has a very sensible order. I mean, if you just think about how we sort of decompose the problems, right? We started off with one planet. We started off with a science ship and a construction ship and a military fleet. And we said, here's what we're going to do. We need information right now. There's basically a question and response pattern that we've used. And I didn't make this explicit, but this is the way that we're looking at it. I need information about where to put my resources. I don't have that information. How am I going to get it? In this case, I said, I'm going to split up my military force. I'm going to explore the planets and see what we can find. That information told us that we had a lot of colonizable planets nearby, and that we, that we're more or less safe in terms of being able to take it. All of that informed my future decisions. I moved my science ships to find out exactly the nature of these planets. We said, okay, let's find some energy because we know we're low on that. I said, I've got an advantage right now of being able to build new populations for energy, but I don't have enough energy to build them right now. How am I going to fix this? And we went out and we found every trick that we could to find new energy. And we were able to kind of turn this into a very large advantage. I mean, if we take a look at my demographics, right? It's maybe not 50-50 anymore, but that's a fairly sizable amount of work that the robot population is doing. And we were finally able to use all of that information. If you think about those first few moves that we did in terms of just sort of dividing out the ships, that ultimately made me decide on a tradition that I'd never used before. But it's actually one that's paying off very handsomely for us because we've already got, I mean, if you think about what we got from that on its own, from getting an additional pop for a new colony, both of our new colonies took advantage of that. So that's 2 new population that we had right out the gate. in terms of the colonies that we're going to be building, 1, 2, 3 for sure, additional pops, and then possibly 4 and 5. So if you think of that in terms of the cost of trying to build up another robot, or if you think about that in terms of the cost of, just waiting and not using those resources over the time, I think that was a decision that was a pretty good one. And all of that just came out of a very simple thing of saying not, what is my grand strategy for the next 100 turns? But it's more, this is the immediate problem that I have right now. How am I going to be able to take advantage of the existing resources that I have? And how am I going to be able to overcome some of the current challenges that I have in here? So I hope you guys find this game interesting. I definitely encourage you, those of you who have it and have been maybe sitting on it for a while, there's a lot of cool new stuff that came in the Adams patch, and I don't know when Bradbury's due out, but there's more to come. So I think it's a good time to be into Stellaris. I mean, they've now had a first full expansion and sort of shown what they're made out of, and I am very encouraged by what's coming into this game. I hope you are too. And we will see you next time. I'm going to be casting on Wednesday, probably not Stellaris though. I am still a variety caster. So if you guys are Stellaris only, I will encourage you to stop by on Monday. And yes, Sound of Trance. I did want to take a minute here. I'm definitely holding out this exit, but thank you very much for your host. Or not your host, but your tweet. I really do appreciate that. I think we did get a bigger audience than what we're accustomed to here because of that. So I really appreciate it. Now, do you mind if I asked if you wanted to private message me? I would very happily host whoever you're tweeting next. I don't normally kind of blind host Stellaris players. But if you had an idea in terms of who you're going to tweet out on the cast, I'd very happily host them to keep the interest going. If not, I have a couple of people who I normally host as well, so I've got I definitely am not short on places I can send you lovely people. Of course, for those of you, if you guys are looking for more Stellaris, I'm sure you already know it's pretty late in the USA, and in the EU it's still 7 a.m. Okay, fair enough. Then I think what I'll do tonight, guys, I will host... All right, not a problem at all. So if you guys are looking for more Stellaris, I'll encourage you to click down below the Stellaris button. I don't really know a lot of people who do this game. I'm a big loner. I march to the beat of my own drum. But I am going to host a channel that I really like. Obviously there's the affiliation, so this is going to come off as purely mercenary, but Kilgore Trout, a fellow Ontarian, he's currently playing Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Kilgore Trout is a great classic gamer. He plays a lot of stuff that he enjoyed when it first came out. He is a charming guy, and he really... I don't know, he always sells the stuff well. So he's currently streaming on the GOG.com channel. I'd love it if you guys could come along. I think the best thing that a streamer can ever ask is for an opportunity to entertain you. I hope you guys enjoy him. I'm going to be doing a quick raid. If you want to use the raid message, that's fine. I know him relatively well. But we will be hosting the GOG channel, and I hope you guys give it a quick chance. But if not, Stellaris is a great game, and I would love more chances for you guys to look at it. And I definitely appreciate that, Sound of Trance. I will mention... If you, Postman Pat, thank you for the follow. I will say I do, it's Paradox on Mondays, so I know there will be some points where I don't do Stellaris, but it is Stellaris for the foreseeable future. So as long as you are willing to, to get the word out, I will always do my best to cast well. Kilgore's on a short break, but when he comes back, he'll be doing box and movie hype. Definitely worth watching. I am so glad for that, Uncle Elias. So. I didn't know he did box and movie hype on GOG. But anyways, guys, GOG.com it is. They very graciously hosted me for Alpha Centauri a couple of weeks ago. They're great people, and they know gaming. So, see you next time, and thank you for being such a good audience.